The following is a conversation between myself and Jeff Tounge, also known as JT. JT is one of the most inspirational people I know and somebody I really enjoy talking to, and that's why I've chosen him to be my first podcast. His drive to be a better human pushes me every single day, and his enthusiasm for fitness, nutrition, fatherhood, faith, mental health, ultra running, triathlons are all topics we cover in this video, which was taken a day after we both completed two pretty epic events. He completed a double marathon, I completed an Ironman. It's a conversation I'm quite proud of, one I look forward to doing more of, and I hope you enjoy. Alrighty. Good morning.
Morning.
I am, as I know you are because we've talked, I'm so excited to have you. And this is the first, besides our little race companion we did last night, it's the first podcast. And you started all of this for me. I mean, a little conversation on the beach about Joe Rogan, and then turned into a podcast with you, and then like this whole thing. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right. So I have a bunch of questions, and I kind of want you to go over your life experience with these things.
Ooh.
And then how it's influenced you today and how you recommend for other people. And the first one, I think I'm going to answer the question because that's what good interviewers do. They ask a question and then answer it themselves. But just to give you
I have all the same questions for you, so
right,
I can't even cross my legs.
right, right. For those of you that don't know, we had a pretty epic day yesterday. I ran an Ironman JT, ran the double marathon. This is 6 a.m. the next morning, 7 a.m. the next morning. So we're still definitely in recovery mode and very sore. You'll see us doing weird motions with our bodies, trying to see what's working and what's not. And it happens to be Kaylin's birthday.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, what is today? It's today. That's awesome.
18 today.
Oh, what are you guys doing? She's got practice?
Probably. We're kind of waiting. Evan comes home next week, so we're going to do something bigger next week. We'll probably just go to dinner.
Oh, awesome.
So,
Where's he coming back from?
Missouri.
Oh, training?
Basic.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Second round of basic.
That's
training.
awesome.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, so first question, which I have little sticky notes just so I can remember. Okay, so exercise. Like I said, I'm going to answer this for you. Answer this
I'd like to
in
hear
kind of
what
the
you have to
way, just to give you an idea of kind of how I'm thinking. So the first, this is on my mind at 1 a.m. this morning. The first thought I can think of kind of thinking of exercise, besides just playing in the yard, playing in school, wherever, I think is, and there's a couple of them right around the same time, the Thanksgiving Day game in Portland. Mikey Porter. I don't think I even remember watching the game at all, besides little bits here and there, but just being aware of the picture that the Porters had in their entryway of Mike in his uniform, and how intent everybody was on it, and Mike kind of being, in my eyes, a super athlete.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first memory, but I don't think that actually caused me to drive me to football or get into football or working out or anything like that. But it becomes something I think I draw on later. And then around the same time in life, and maybe even before, I think at my grandparents' house, also on Thanksgiving, the other side of the family than our family, after Thanksgiving the football game would be on. It was like Cowboys Washington. And Roger Starbuck was the quarterback then. And I remember kind of like his name is Star, like how cool is that? So those are kind of my first, and so I was kind of going through my head of like kind of significant kinds of sporting events that I saw through life. And then the next one that popped into my head kind of timeline wise was Joan Benoit.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a weird one. Like I can remember like the first two and this one, all of these are places I can kind of remember. Like
Yeah.
I remember being there. I remember this.
Right.
There was some, and I'm not even sure. Like who knows what stuck in my head at my whatever age I was at. I mean, probably, I don't think in middle school yet. But it was when she won the gold medal in the marathon. And it was just an interesting one that's one I can clearly remember watching and seeing.
See, I don't have any recollection of Joan Bourne, and it came up recently with my parents. They were talking about her, and I think she still runs around Portland, like wears out and around.
I'm sure.
A little bit, but I never like was even aware of her.
I mean, I was pretty young for this memory.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just about the time, I mean, like I said, probably almost middle school.
Yeah.
You know, and you're a few years younger, so
Right.
it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But there was, as far as there was a connection to Maine,
Right.
you know,
Oh yeah.
and there was it was just kind of and she didn't look like other athletes you saw on TV were super athletes.
Right.
You know, Carl Lewis. I remember watching, seeing Carl Lewis jump and run or whatever. You know, and he's winning all these gold medals, but there's no connection.
Right.
It's just
Yeah.
so. But that's one, and then there was the Canuske's canoe race. Do you know what that is?
No.
I was wondering this. So JT's a Portland boy. So there's a race every year that's held early spring it ends in Bangor. And it's on the Canuske River.
Mm.
And it's a canoe race, and they film it every year. It's live. I mean, every year. I mean, the first time I think I was watching it, once again, middle school age, and people are just dumping in the river nonstop. And this is pre nice wetsuits, and you get these crazy people doing this race, and because you're going down river, it's not so much about paddling. You're just trying to survive and navigate rapids.
Oh yeah.
Literally rapids in a canoe.
Right.
And you're just watching the falls. I mean,
Yeah.
it's quite hilarious. So it's a big thing around here. I remember watching this at my aunt and uncle's house in Millinocket, just watching this. And my uncles, my mother's brothers, did the race once. And I've never talked to them about it. So I was thinking about this last night, that I'm gonna have to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of a crazy thing. I mean, it's most years it's snowing. There's still snow on the ground, and you get
Oh, wow.
a really good chance. I mean, I would say a 50-50 shot of making it. And you
Yeah.
see them with their canoes coming, and the angle's bad. You're like, oh, they're going in. They're going in. And yeah. So then now summer middle school, my I got maybe Schwarzenegger, and I think partially because I tended to be a little bit more muscular than a lot of people at my age.
Yeah.
I was never big or bulky like that,
Right.
but I was a little bit more muscular, and I remember my dad talking about Tracy and him Tracy being into our uncle Tracy being into bodybuilding
Yeah.
a little bit,
Yeah.
which always kind of interested me. My dad doing some, and so at some point my dad, I got like a little workout set, and I remember I had like an exercise list I put up on my wall, and there was a girl who was at the University of Maine through the church, and she was like a bodybuilder, and my dad kind of put me up with her, and I went to the UMaine gym and worked, and she kind of showed me some things. Still didn't get me in, I had the stuff, but I wasn't hardcore into
Right.
it.
Right.
It wasn't a working out thing. I think when that changed was freshman year football, I'd broken my leg, and after the season we all started, there was a local gym that the football team went to for
Yeah.
a really good price. And that's where the bug hit me. Being in the gym and just,
Yep.
I remember just pushing I remember wanting to get to 225 in bench, right? I mean, actually, I take that back. I remember 135.
I know, right.
You know, and kind of that trying to, and there's no way to get there except hard work,
Right.
And just I remember Steve, my friend Steve Avery, him and I just pushing ourselves and
Yeah.
pushing each other. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Come on, one more, come on. You know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And that got infectious. So that's definitely where the working out thing that we've been into started for me. And but then and I stayed in shape through high school and stuff like that. In college, working out was just a regular thing. But then I lost that at some point.
Right.
Life
Most
gets in
people
the
do.
way. Right.
Yeah.
And I think it was mostly weight for me. I put on more weight than I wanted to, and started. I had Logan and I have discussed body dysmorphia a lot. Well, I had it, I think, the opposite way most people have it. I thought I was still in shape. And
Right.
and I hadn't really. I wasn't the athlete my brain thought I still was.
Yep.
Yeah. So then I got back into just some running and just trying to find a way to lose weight, which has snowballed into, trying a marathon, trying some triathlons, and then like we talked about briefly earlier, that conversation with you, which has spiraled into this ultra marathon craziness that we've done this last year.
That was the one out here at the campfire?
No, our
What?
the conversation was at the beach.
Oh, the beach?
The first time we brought up Joe Rogan.
Oh, yeah.
And so those of you who don't know, I mean, JT and I are cousins. We've always been friendly together. And we've hung out a little bit, which you didn't remember. We played golf together.
Yeah, family stuff, yeah. I don't remember that.
But we didn't we got this last year. We've gotten a lot tighter.
Yeah.
JT is one of the most exciting people. I look forward to talking to you. I can't wait to pick your brain. An email comes across, I'm lost in it. But it's definitely, since that conversation about Joe Rogan that day, and it wasn't anything in particular Joe Rogan. It's just that you and I think alike. You
Right.
just said it just a minute ago.
Yeah.
And there aren't. Actually, I think what we talked about that morning, there aren't many other people that think this way that we know. And yeah. So I think that's kind of my, and I don't want to get into all the craziness that we're doing at some point, but that's kind of my arc to get to where I'm at. And I do think, and a lot of these things, and a lot of what I want this podcast to be, is, we have so many of these little conversations, these quick little conversations, and we don't ever get to know each other, and bridging that gap. And yeah, I think it'd be nice for friends, family to kind of see something like this, and I'm hoping to get some motivation and see how it really can spiral into what we're doing.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be that either. So, so I do want to talk about, and I'll leave this part for you after you kind of give your kind of arc, how you take what you've learned and what you recommend going forward. How would you pay that? Not so much really pay for, but what would you say to people that haven't experienced what we have, that maybe need to lose some weight, maybe need,
I think you tell me, but I think that the reason we're doing this is not for physical fitness or to lose weight or anything like that. It's, for me, it's learning how to overcome life's challenges, to just be better at life. And fitness, exercise, all the things that we're doing, diet, nutrition, are just a really good way to learn about yourself and to be disciplined and to, try to grow.
Right.
So, we're both in our 40s now. I don't think of myself as an ultra guy or, you're an Ironman. I don't really associate with the actual fitness side of it. I associate with understanding mental toughness and how to, get better at even the small things, like being a better parent or being better in a relationship. And all of those things, what is funny, and we can talk about it in the ultra, all of those things come out when you're in the pain cave, or when you've gone dark, when you're at that point where you don't want to do anything else, you're basically ready to quit.
Right.
You don't want to run anymore. And you have to build the skill set that allows you to go past that. And you can apply that, I'm trying to apply that to every aspect of life. You know what I mean? Where you're at work, you're stressed out, you're just I can't do this anymore. There's these mental exercises you can go through to just kind of say, okay, I've been here before, what do I need to do? So that's the learning experience that I'm going after. Right. We're doing some pretty crazy physical fitness and, exercise stunts while we're at it, but I'm far more interested in, and going back, writing it down, figuring out okay, what did I do wrong? What did I learn? What do I need to do next time? And that's what I think a year ago when we were on the beach, we kind of were like, oh, he gets it. He knows what I'm after.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I'm not after, even my friends were like, why don't you join like a race? At least you get like a free T-shirt out of it. I'm like, yeah, I'll do that, but that's not what I'm doing this for. You know what I mean?
Pay for that T-shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Then you gotta like travel and do all this. I was like, I can go run 50 in my backyard. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm more interested in like doing something that scares the heck out of me, being in the middle of it, knowing that I don't want to finish, figuring out how to finish, and then enjoying that success. Right? You know what I mean? Like heaven's on the other side of hell. Like you don't get to actually really, like I feel pretty good this morning knowing that we've both finished and finished strong and met our goals and objectives. That's a feeling that you don't get to experience if you don't put yourself through that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's what I'm after. The arc,
Yeah.
I'll try and do the abbreviated version because it's
No,
there's multiple arcs
We
and
get all the time in the world.
there are probably more valleys than they are anything else. But it's funny. My childhood, like I have a similar experience to you. I grew up in a great family. You grew up in a great family. Like I think we just got introduced to all the sports, you know what I mean? Soccer, or no, I didn't do soccer. Baseball, football, I think I even tried basketball at one point, but, and then you just kind of like learn what works, and I think I took to football early, I enjoyed it. It's funny, I was, so I have 4 kids, and they're all at the age where they're going through this kind of experience now, but like, I was a short, chubby kid growing up, which has led to a lot of other things that have come out here, and, just body dysmorphia on both sides of the fence, you know what I mean? And I always say, like, what's it called? Vanity can be a very, powerful tool if you know how to use it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, so they put me on the offensive line, like they do with most short, chubby kids, and then I kind of stuck with that, and I was the catcher in baseball, you know what I mean? So probably would have been a goalie if I played hockey.
Weren't you the center?
Yeah, I was,
To an NFL quarterback?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So,
Sorry.
well, and it's funny, I mean, when we would get together up at Damascotta Lake, there was the Porter kids, there was all your brothers, Josh and Sam. Like, it was a very intense athletic environment, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And the Porters are just super athletes. And I remember,
Or supersized athletes.
supersized athletes. And I remember growing up around that.
Because Luke, I'm not including you in the super athletes.
No, there's 3 college athletes. I mean, it's just they,
Oh.
and then we would compete and wrestle and fight and do all that kind of stuff. And I also remember working out with you and your dad. And actually, I wouldn't have thought of this until you said it, but your dad is one of the most intense people in the gym. I just remember that. I remember we went to, I think, a Gold's gym, and we were lifting, and he was like, and you think of your dad or your uncle as like an old guy, and he was getting after it. I still remember that to this day. But
That's hilarious. Let me just interject. So my dad, maybe it's just later in life. My memories of my dad in the gym are lift quickly, then go to the water cooler for quite a long time
really?
and chat it up.
yeah,
There was definitely a time he got after it.
yeah,
But my memories remember, my mom would give him a hard time about how long he'd spend at the water cooler talking.
But I do remember working out with you and thinking, man, this guy's an animal in the gym. But so I was had all the sports experiences, and then when it clicked for me, same thing. It was the summer before my freshman year. I was going into high school football. They had a gym. It was down actually at the Hadlock Field where the Sea Dogs play, and the Sea Dogs would be coming and going. We had our own little gym. Rocco Franzilli was he was a teacher that would staff the weight room. He was in unbelievable shape, and he ended up being my rugby coach in high school. But I remember going in, not knowing anything about lifting, and I was a incoming freshman, and all it was juniors and seniors lifting 225, like getting after it. It was very intimidating, and I actually don't remember why I was comfortable with it, but I was just like, I know I need to be here. Like, I need to work hard. I need to figure this thing out. And it was really intimidating, you know what I mean, as an incoming freshman. And there was one other freshman, I think it was Jason Connick, that was there consistently every day, Monday through Friday, until double session started. And then I fell in love with weight training at that point. And just being in the gym and the music and, everything about it. And that brought me through high school. And I would say hands down, I am not a gifted athlete by any stretch.
Right.
You know what I mean? Never have been in any sport. The only time I can get any level of success is through hard work, and also probably just the thinking aspect of it. You know what I mean? Like understanding the sport, putting yourself in the right position. You know what I mean? Not drawing on raw talent. You know, just being smart about it. So worked, did all the stuff in high school, and then another part of the story is junior year. I was sitting in history class, sitting next to my friend John Krasnick, still my best friend, one of my best friends to this day. And a guidance counselor walked in, knocked on the door, and said, "Hey Jeff, there's a cadet from West Point here. I think you should talk to him." And I literally turned to my friend. I was like, "What's West Point?" He was like, "I think."
What year is this again?
Early junior year
Wow.
in high school. And he's like, "I think it's a military academy." I was like, "All right." So I had no idea, had never even heard of it before. Went, sat down with this cadet and started talking and asked him some questions and didn't even know what he was talking about, So I went home and I told my parents, I was like, "Yeah, cadet from West Point," and they think that I should apply. And I remember my dad was like quietly excited, and my mom was like, "No, you're military? No way." So anyways, and just one thing led to another, and I just started the process. I looked into it, and then I figured out what it was. You know what I mean? It's a really great academy, obviously. I was a good student, but I wasn't getting into Harvard or anything like that. But it appeared that I had the prerequisites to get into a school like that. And then once I started applying, I got early admission, so I got accepted early, which is just before my senior year. And then I was, at that point, I was like really locked in, and
So what drew you to that? What
no idea. So I mean, like most kids, I played soldier, played army when I was a kid, GI Joe. I dress up in army gear, and I think I had some interest in the idea of that.
Mm-hmm.
But this was 1999. Didn't know anything about the military. All I knew was that, and this is maybe the selfish side of things, but I was like, I would tell people when they would ask you like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to West Point, or I'm going to West Point," and there was this like recognition that was a big deal.
Right.
And I was like, "All right, that's cool. I like that." You know what I mean? That sounds like something I should be doing. So, but I remember from when I got accepted to when I actually started, when I went, there was a year where the entire time I thought, again, I was going to be at the bottom of the barrel, right? Like I didn't think of myself as a natural athlete. I'd done, captain the football team and, different stuff like that. But I was going in thinking that I was going to be, these guys were going to be at a different level. So I worked really hard going into it. I was running the boulevard in Portland with a weighted backpack. I was, I got boots, put those on, did rough marches. Cause I wanted to train. And then I got there and got through basic the first summer and found out that I was physically at least in good shape. You know what I mean?
The basic you do at West Point is the normal basic?
It's fashioned like a 6 or 8 week basic training, but it's administered by the
West Point.
by the other cadets. So when you're a junior senior, you have to then be the drill sergeant. Right. And I actually loved basic. So there's periods of time throughout the arc where you get yourself into complex, stressful, intense situations, and you feel okay. You're dreadful getting into it, and your brain, is telling you all the reasons why you're gonna fail or you're not gonna make it and all that kind of stuff. But when you get into it, you're comfortable. You're like, okay, this is an environment that I like. I can handle that, and I actually loved basic. I think there was times when I would also, I'm very anti-authoritarian, so I made West Point sucked, and I made it harder than it needed to be, just because I don't like being told what to do. But my thought process was like, I'm self-motivated, disciplined. I don't need people to tell me. Like, you want me to be up at 4 o'clock and go run 10 miles? Just tell me. I don't need someone yelling at me telling me to do that, because I'll go do it. So then I would we'd be in we'd be in a line, and I would like crack a joke or try and do something just so that they would make me do push-ups, and then I'd start doing push-ups. Like, yeah, I can do that. So
That's such a gog kind of thing.
yeah, it was. I was a pain. I thought I knew everything, but I mean, West Point was hard. It's supposed to be hard. Academically, I was proficient. I was middle of the class, and physically, I think I did very well and trained hard all the way through school. I will tell you though that I met some of the most amazing animals at that school. I mean, guys that were just. So my college roommate, who actually now lives in Maine, he was my roommate for like 3 years, which is uncommon at school. They usually move you around, but we got to stick together. Captain of the lacrosse team, and they got like a D1, stud lacrosse team. Captain of the lacrosse team, top of his class academically, just an unbelievably gifted guy. Like he was the stud that I was worried about. I was like, this is who they all are going to be like. And there was a lot of those guys, just absolute animals, and it was fun associating with them because I felt like I could keep up, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I learned a lot about. Although I'll also say, at one point, when I was there was a cadet who actually passed away, but he was a runner, and he was telling me. I just remember the story. We were in the hallway, and he was like, "Yeah," he's like, "I really want to do ultra marathons." I was like, "What's that?" He's like, "It's like 50, 100 miles." And I remember clearly being like, I thought he was lying to me. I was like, that's not a thing. There's nobody runs 50 miles.
That was literally the thought I had when you kind of told me.
I was probably 20 years old, and I was looking at this guy, and I was like, you're just making things up now, because nobody does that. And we had internet, but not like we have now.
Right.
So I didn't go Google, YouTube, ultras.
Probably wouldn't even have done it.
No, I just thought he was just making things up to sound impressive. But, so there was things that I wasn't into, you know what I mean? I liked being in difficult, stressful environments and figuring out, although if you're thinking about recommendations, the one thing that I regret or wish I had done differently throughout all of this, so high school football is stressful and intense, and I've got one of my sons is in that environment right now, and I'm trying to coach him through it. What I never did was connect the physical and the mental for 40 years, and I'm doing it now, and I'm starting to see enormous benefits.
Right.
I was young enough and dumb enough to just be able to do it, but I never really took the time to learn how to manage negative emotions, manage your thoughts, look back and reflect okay, that was very difficult, and I kind of had to break down why is that, what should I change.
Right.
So for a long time I just got through on grit. That was it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's my biggest thing for other people that are going through difficult situations is if you can use it as a training event for the brain and understand how your consciousness works and your emotions work. I mean, the physical's something you can always do, but you're way better off understanding that portion of it.
Right.
So, and then 6 years in the military, in the Army, same thing. So 2 deployments to Iraq, one in 2006 in Baghdad. I always tell people 2006 was crazy. I mean, it was the peak of sectarian violence. The Sunnis and Shias were fighting nonstop. We were in the middle of it, just trying to play police. I was driving around in this very bad neighborhood with a platoon of guys, just trying not to get blown up. I mean, it was as traditional of a war experience as you would have for a year. Maybe, it wasn't part of the initial invasion, which was more like what we would say kinetic, where a lot of stuff was blown up. But by 2006, IEDs were at a peak. There was just a lot going on, you know what I mean? And it was crazy. But I was 25. I had been well trained through the Army, and I was just kind of, going through the motions in the sense of I knew what to do, and you just go out and do it. But again, I wasn't mentally tough. I think, you know what I mean. I probably was as a byproduct of the environment that the military puts you in, but I remember looking back, I wasn't managing my stress and emotions properly. You know what I mean?
I almost think it would be kind of so yesterday in the race, I'd asked Dee, I'm like, don't ask me how I'm doing because, I can't think about that. I can't go there because it makes it real. And whatever, I have to answer that question, then I have to think about that question. I would almost think in a stressful environment like that, like you kind of have to you're just survive. You know what I mean? There's a certain amount of just. If I stopped and thought about all the craziness that's going around,
Right.
then it gets overwhelming.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, and that's the benefit.
So that might be the survival.
That's definitely the benefit of discipline. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
if you train hard and you're disciplined, then when you're in the race day or you're in the crisis, your discipline comes through, and you're really actually probably reacting.
Right.
So yeah, actually, I remember training for a year up to the deployment, and then all the way through the deployment. It was just like forward momentum. That was it. You know what I mean? It's just like I can't stop and complain about it. You know what I mean? You just got to keep moving
right.
and reacting and drawing on your training and stuff. So, and then my second deployment in 2008 was, I was a captain at the point. I was on staff, which was basically a desk job. It was much quieter. And also, just a quick anecdote, 2007 was the surge, the Iraq surge. The Bush put another 30,000 troops into Baghdad. So I left in 2006. We got replaced by a surge unit, a Marine unit, and they came in. And I remember at the time being like, we high-fived and we're like, good luck, this is chaos. It's not going to get better. Like, this is terrible. And then 2007 went by, we went back to Fort Hood, trained for another year, and then went right back to the same place. And from 2006 to 2008, the improvement was like night and day.
Right.
So we got back and people were out, shops were open, the date, like there was, I can't remember the number, but it was probably something like in a brigade area in 2006, there was, 50 attacks a day, some crazy, like just nonstop chaos. 2008, there'd be like one a week. I mean, had really quieted down. I have those numbers wrong, but it was a drastic improvement, and which was nice to see.
Yeah.
For soldiers that were given everything to try and improve this situation. So, and wanted to get out. The plan was always go to the military, do my 5 years. I did 6 because of the deployment, and get back to Maine and raise the family. Had 2 girls when I was in the Army, and then we started having more. So, and then 2008-9 when I got out to when I turned 40 a year ago, 12 years was just trying to start a career, trying to manage the family, just kind of back to normal life. And I lost a lot of I would work out every day. I probably run 3 or 4 times a week, every week for my entire life.
Right.
Just, it's something to do. But I was not eating right, and actually I was looking at pictures in 2014 and I was heavy, like almost unrecognizable, you know what I mean? So it's just a normal, that's the arc that a lot of people go through,
right.
Especially when you get into the family environment where you're settled, barbecues on the weekends.
Schedule fills up.
Yeah, and you're not trying to, I don't need to train like I'm in the Army anymore.
Right.
So, but that same 12 years was a tough 12 years for me because I let a lot of things go, and went through some personal challenges. And because I didn't spend that time on managing stress and negative emotions and all the things that I'm trying to do now, it just piled on, you know what I mean? And, I kind of fell apart. Went through a divorce when I was 33 with 4 kids, which really kind of, to be honest, just floored me for like 5 years. Which is another reason to like focus on mental health, managing your emotions, because life will pile on you, and you've got to be able to get through that in a productive way. You know what I mean? Like anybody can just wake up in the morning and get through the day, but like try and get through it in a productive way where you're beneficial for your kids and your work and everything else. So, and then around 38, I started to like come out of that valley and started tapping into the YouTube community of like motivation and understanding what other people were doing.
Right.
I think just before me and you connected, I was going through a year or 2 with Joe, my brother, who thinks very much like this. He does his own type of fitness and stuff, but he has the same mindset where he's really kind of trying to understand the whole mind, body, spirit, spectrum.
Speaking of non-athletes in the family, Joe fits that bill.
He,
I hope you're listening, Joe.
oh gosh, that was hard. Yeah, we could spend a whole hour on Joe. He's great, and he's very wise. He's 8 years younger than me, and I go to him now for advice, which is really cool. But when I was 38, him and I were getting into Gary Vee. Do you know Gary Vee?
I know.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Oh, you should check him out. He's like the Goggins of business. Like he's just like he's an entrepreneur, and his whole community is around helping entrepreneurs kind of get through the fear, right? You know, the fear of failure. You know, fear of being behind. You know what I mean? Like you can always start now. So, and he's got a really compelling story and work ethic. Like he's part of that whole community. Some people can't take his delivery style, but
Right.
but Joe, my brother Joe, and I started trading ideas of like what it meant to not care about what other people thought, and you know, to set goals, like figure out where you want to be, and then design your life in a way that sets you up to make small improvements to those bigger goals. You know, so I started to get the bug of self-improvement, essentially what it was, and then within that period of time, over those next 2 years, it kind of morphed into, you know, the physical side.
Right.
And obviously, Joe Rogan's community is great, you know, for that, all the folks. But
Right.
and then a year ago, last Labor Day weekend, you were doing your first full distance Ironman by yourself, which I still think is amazing. Like, it's one thing to train for an Ironman and go out into a race with the camaraderie and the cheering and the fan and you know, but to just go out and do it on your own takes another level of commitment and discipline, I think, which is awesome. So you did that race, and you know, I also, through the military and over that arc, you know, I've always been motivated by keeping up with other people. You know what I mean? It's just like it's typical meathead high school football, like,
Right.
you know, hold my beer, like, oh, you can do that, we'll watch this, you know. So I was like, all right, I gotta get it on track with bed. And then December, I came up here to Hamden, and we went for a run, and that's when we went out and talked about, because the ultra at that point was what I really wanted to get into. We started sharing stories, and in this just 1 year, you did your first full distance Ironman, and then we did together a marathon in the freezing rain around the boulevard, which was brutal. And I had never done a marathon before in my life.
So yeah.
I mean, I'm a runner. I'm definitely a runner.
Right.
But I just had never trained for a marathon. So we went out and we did 26, and it was like, 34 degrees, freezing rain. We were soaked.
That distance is no joke.
Yeah, it was
to start off.
At that level, knocked that out, and then went straight to the ultras. So we knocked the 50K out, 31 miles on our own.
Right.
And of course, you were like, and I can feel when it's about to happen, Ben. I'm like, I bet this is the weekend he goes out and does a 50K by himself. And sure enough, your Garmin would pop up, and I'd see the miles on there. I was like, oh, I guess I know what I'm doing next weekend. So 50K, 50 miles.
But when that happens, I'm picking a good weather day.
Yeah.
A week later, you're trying to catch up now, and it's a crap weather day.
But I mean, we've just done a lot in this past year. Multiple 50s, 100-mile attempts, which we can talk about. And then this, for me, yesterday was actually a huge improvement just over the course of a year. You know what I mean? But what's been great through that year that I think about, one, if you're looking to improve and to challenge yourself, try to get an accountability partner. Try to get somebody that's thinking about this the same way you are, so you can motivate each other, share. Because in that past year, there was times when you were having a bad week. You know what I mean? You'd be like, I just don't have it this week. You know what I mean? And I try and give you something, and same goes for me. You know what I mean? And if nothing else, I know you're out there training, and I need to be out there training too. But yeah. So I mean, I've got decades of improvement in front of me, but I'm just happy to have started the journey of finally. And trust me, like, when behind the scenes, there's always a lot going on.
Right.
Friends, family, relationships, work, and I'm not firing on all cylinders yet, but I'm starting to pull the pieces in of what I need, I think, to sustain, you know, a more productive lifestyle,
Right.
you know, which is what I'm excited about. And I just think that this training environment that we're in is just a really good place to learn those skills,
Right.
you know.
Right.
You know, I also say if you're going to learn how to be mentally tough or just improve your mental toughness, it's nice when you can control the parameters, you know what I mean? Like, because when you're stressed out and you're having a bad day at work and your boss is difficult and is, you know, breathing down your neck, you can't control that. And if that's where you're going to try and learn how to be tougher, it's going to be very hard, you know what I mean? So if you can actually just step away and create your own stressful environment to then play with, you can go at your own pace, you can, you know, kind of dial things in and out. And then when life throws it at you and you have no control, you'll at least have had those experiences.
Right.
So, you know, that's what I'm going after. The fun byproduct is we did get to do cool stuff. I think our health is probably at an all-time peak, you know, which is
Right
great.
now I wonder if this is good for you, us.
What?
That's the way I'm feeling at the moment.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. I mean, put that one to bed real quick because it is good for us.
Yeah.
Like our bodies are miracles, absolute design miracles, and they're designed to be rugged and to handle the chaos of life. And that's what it is. I mean, I keep coming back to the people that I gravitate to are the ones that acknowledge that life is chaos and that there's difficulties and challenges, both internal and external. It's like, that's the reality.
Right.
And we were designed to be able to handle that.
Yeah.
We just submit to it, unfortunately, a lot of times. But
I hear people say it's probably my number one pet peeve. So when somebody say I can't do that, I can't. It's like, why?
right.
Like, how do you know? Have you? Sure, your knees hurt when you went for a run, but you only ran once or twice.
Right.
Of course, it's gonna hurt.
Right.
You know, it's been years since you've even ran at all. You know, whether it's running or whatever it is, we put these limits
Yep.
on ourselves.
Yeah, and I always try to tell people, and people that are just starting their journey don't want to hear it, but the reality is that nobody is above the laws of science and physics, right? You know what I mean? Like, there are fundamental laws where your body is going to learn how to adapt, you know what I mean? Like, we have muscular systems, nervous systems, things that are designed to take on that stress and to become more resilient. The reality is when they're saying that, what they're really saying is they just don't want to put in the effort.
Right.
It's harsh, but it's true. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like, oh, I can't do that. It's like, no, absolutely, you 1,000% can. You don't have right now what it takes to endure the training, and to get to that other side. And there's limit. Like I'll say I can't be an Olympic marathoner.
Right.
Okay, but because there's skill and work ethic that have to go hand in hand, you know, talent and work ethic
Right.
to get there.
Right.
But when you're just talking about the stuff that we're doing, like I can't run 100 miles. I can run 100 miles. I'm not putting in what I need to do yet to get to that point.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And, you know, like we all die from something, you know what I mean? And if I give my knees out because of this, which I don't think is actually going to happen, I believe the use it or lose it philosophy.
Right.
You keep your body trained, well fed, nourished, smart training. You know, we're doing way more stretching and sauna and
Right.
you know, cold therapy. If you train it properly, you know what I mean, you're going to be better off in the long run. And whatever, I'd rather have these fun experiences and do crazy stuff
Right.
when I can, and then when I'm 80, look back on it and say, at least I gave it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, as long as you're, although we could talk about being dumb, you know what I mean? There's a side of what we're experimenting here with, which is just trying to break the body,
Right.
to see where your brain breaks.
Right.
But I don't think we're there yet.
One of the things I think I've learned, or the thing that I've noticed attracts me to what you and I are doing, that drives me every day, is this attraction to uncomfortable things. So in the morning, I do a brutal workout. Like you said, you have a bad day at work. It's not as bad as my workout was.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then I'm starting to be attracted. We talked about briefly, like stand-up comedy, like how terrifying that'd be. But I find myself starting to go to these, and I think where this applies to just about anyone out there. Like we tend to go too easy for comfort across the board, and like a little thing, like at the grocery store. Like I'm at, like I see these just heavy people among us, right? Imagine they, instead of just putting the cart in the little thing or at the curb that's right next to their vehicle that takes up a parking spot, they walked it to the store.
Right.
What if they just parked? What if they just parked? Decided to just park the farthest spot away.
Yeah.
And just walk to the store. Literally, they'd start changing their bodies.
Right.
And I've been trying to do like, I've been trying to force myself to start looking at these the comforts and challenging my thoughts on them, and it's been a really cool journey, and it kind of just branches out into everything. Why can't I do that? Why, you know, looking at the effort I'm putting in at work, you know, I can give a little bit more. Like
Yeah.
I can have-ass this little thing, or I can give it my all.
Right.
And it's becoming. I've noticed this kind of snowballing into like challenging myself across the board and being a better dad, being like across life.
Right.
And it's because of this, seeing all this benefit from challenging myself physically.
Right.
And like you said, the tie-in, which I mean, when you were talking about the tie-in to life, and you were in your late 30s, 40s, before that became a thing. Yeah, I never reflected on what I was doing and contemplated it, which maybe it's just age, but
Yeah.
it's a really interesting.
Right.
Once you start thinking that way, and I mean, for me, like the weight loss thing when it started was just like finding little. Oh, I can cut this out. I can cut this out. Oh, this is a healthier option. This is these little things
Right.
in life. All these little things that you start snowballing, and before you know it, your life changes and you're better. And and to me, I put in, the harder I push myself in the morning. So my favorite mornings, which we've talked about this a bunch, but my favorite mornings are the mornings where I wake up and I don't want any part of my workout
Yeah.
that morning.
Yeah.
And then I push myself, getting through that on the other side, and how good I feel every day from working out. But those days when I'm like, I didn't want to do it, but I did it, those are the days I look forward to the most now.
Yeah.
Like I know I don't look forward to it that morning,
Right.
but as soon as it's done, it's like,
Right. You learn more from those.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I thought about this a lot in the last year based on the training that we're doing, because we find ourselves more in the situation of doing something that's very hard that we don't want to do. Like, I could probably be aesthetically in better shape by doing a lot less. I know I could. You know what I mean? Like 3 days of cardio, weight training, and we've talked about this. Like, I could make myself look the same with a fraction of the effort.
Right.
But that's not why we're doing this.
Right.
You know what I mean? We're doing this because you wake up, you know, at 4 a.m. Your shoes are sitting there. You're staring at them. You don't want to put them on. You're making all the excuses. I've got a long day at work. Maybe I should skip it and do it later, which is code for maybe I won't do it. Though that's why we're doing this, is put ourselves in uncomfortable situations that we don't want to do. And it's not just by luck. You don't just by luck go out and do it. You have to find things that work for you to trigger moving forward through that. And then once it's accomplished, the training was probably hard in of itself, but the real victory is that you didn't want to do it at all and you still did it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's what you can directly apply to every other aspect. You know what I mean? I think about like the creative people, stand-up comedians or writers or artists. I have this conversation with Joe a lot, who's a writer for music writer. A lot of things that stop creatives is they're staring at the blank canvas. I paint and I have the same exact experience. You know, you're trying to create something and you get easily distracted, you procrastinate, but all that is the fear. You know, you're afraid that whatever you put on the canvas is not going to be good and it's going to be judged. And that initial resistance, a lot of people back away from, and they go find comfort instead. And when you can learn how to get through that resistance, maybe what you put on the canvas is garbage for the next 20
Right.
times, but it's that experience of learning how to get through it, which will allow you to create that masterpiece at some point in the future, right? So yeah, I agree. For everybody that says that you're gonna ruin your knees or that kind of training's not good for you, my response is comfort kills. Like comfort is, I'm convinced, I can't back this up, but comfort is 100 times worse for you in this world based on how we're designed than going out and pushing the limits 24/7.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you can talk about balance and all that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about being unbalanced and sacrificing things that are important. Like I believe, your faith, your family, your friends are important. But when you start succumbing to comfort, which we all do all the time, you're changing your trajectory. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'll also say before we go any further, because we're talking about all the successes and the things that we've learned, I am daily struggling with this stuff.
Right.
I am daily struggling with, I just want to go sit on the couch and watch 5 hours of Netflix. I'm daily struggling with this assignment I have to do for work is really hard and I'm just going to go clean the house as a procrastination tool.
Right.
It's a constant fight. I'd say I've amassed some skills to, navigate that better, but it never goes away.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think that's the other thing too with training that people, I think about this a lot with weight loss. When people get into fad diets or fad exercise programs and they give it, a month or two and, they don't see the success that they'd like to see. What I think is really happening is that they're in some ways jealous, or they think that it's unfair that other people can work out less and be in better shape. And they're like, well, that's not fair. I have to, eat no carbs and train 5 days a week for the rest of my life just to look the way that this person looks, and they wake up and eat pizza and beer. And the reality is, yeah, life is unfair.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I've managed, I know that physically now. Like if I stop doing what I'm doing, I will be out of shape. I will have a dad bod, and I will feel very bad about myself, right? Because, when you're dealing with things like inflammation and chronic health issues, your whole life is just difficult because of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
I do.
if I want to look a certain way or feel a certain way, it's nonstop physical exercise and discipline with nutrition until I get to a point where I don't care anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the same thing goes on with your brain. I think there's some people out there walking around, probably some Olympic athletes and some other people, that have a chemistry in their brain that's set up to be an elite level of mental toughness. Right, where they get into a difficult situation and their brain kind of naturally helps them resist comfort and go towards the challenge. I don't. Like I got a soft brain. You know what I mean? I got a gooey middle section brain, and I can complain about that and be like, man, I wish I just could get up and go get after it. But the reality is I've got to train that just like I got to train my body. And I got to probably train it every single day forever.
Right.
You know what I mean? Maybe some things stick. Like I think we maybe have changed our anatomy a little bit,
Yep.
to be more resilient. But it's constant effort, And that in of itself, you said I would say these words out loud, it's a little depressing. It's a little bit like, man, wouldn't it be nice if we were just all perfect and didn't have to work as hard? You know what I mean? But the outcome, the benefit, the other side of it is so much better when you've actually earned it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And I heard in one podcast that I have no idea who it was with, but it was mentioned that a lot of people, most don't know what it's like to feel healthy.
Right.
And I was like,
Yeah.
when I see these people that are so incredibly out of shape, and just moving, like they're just walking into a store or whatever, it looks like the most uncomfortable thing.
Yeah.
And that's the extreme. I think what we're doing just has mentally is so beneficial to you, just in positiveness. Like you can't help but be positive after
Right.
doing the workouts we do and feeling like we do, and just there's just so many, triumphs, and the failures turn into more triumph, in your learning, and just I can't imagine. A couple things I want to bring up on my arc that I forgot to mention. My freshman year when I broke my leg in football, like at that point, my identity as myself was football player athlete, and I'm injured. I can't be part of the team. I can't. It was the first time I've ever experienced kind of depression in my life.
Yeah.
And probably the only time. I mean, I was just in a funk, and there's no doubt that the weightlifting got me out of it. And actually, I remember like squatting. I've got my cast on. I'm squatting, and I remember like the varsity football coach at the time was he was pretty impressed with me squatting on a broken leg.
Right.
But my orthopedic surgeon told me it actually healed a little faster because of that, actually. So there's that, and that definitely weightlift. That's where I first figured out, and I once again wasn't thinking about these things, wasn't looking at a deeper level, but hindsight, looking back on it, there's no doubt that exercise got me out of my funk. I believe there's. I'm not a scientist. I don't know, but I believe there's quite a bit of data out there that exercise, more exercise, less depression.
Right. Right.
And then, swimming. So you were talking about not feeling naturally gifted as an athlete, had to work for everything. Swimming was the opposite art for me. I was ridiculously fast as a youth, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Maybe I was a little stronger than. There was a point where everybody got taller and I stopped getting taller.
Yeah.
And everybody started passing me. And I always went to swim team. We always did swim practice. I never pushed hard in swim practice. I never once worked hard. I took, I did the workouts, but I always cut corners where I could. And,
right.
I was a sprinter. I didn't need to do all these laps, whatever. And I was leaning on natural talent at that point. I switched to diving. Well, I still did swimming in high school, but I started picking up diving, which diving was, in my head, it was like, oh, they don't even have to because for the most part, as long as I'm doing a little bit of swimming, I can still be the same speed. Like I wasn't, and I was at a point where I wasn't really gaining any. So diving was like an easier practice. It was kind of interesting to me. That was the hardest mental thing I've ever had to do. You jump off a diving board trying to do a dive and you smack hard.
Yeah.
Now you gotta get back up and do it again.
Right.
And we all had a hard. So we were all like football players that are on the diving team. We were all like guys I worked out with, pushing each other.
Right.
It's like you can't go to the showers before you do that dive again.
Right.
Because we all knew if you left practice and that's in your head, that's gonna be a big thing tomorrow.
Yeah.
You gotta get back. You gotta get back on the horse now.
Right.
And just pushing through that it definitely changed who I was. And then I remember my first ever diving meet, and it wasn't even so the University of Maine had a pool, and the Orono team we go and use their board every once in a while because we'd have a meet coming up, and each diving board feels so different than the other. So we did a meet. It was their meet, but they let us dive during it. So there was nobody I knew in the stands or anything like that. It was the other team with just a few parents scattered in the crowd. And I remember being on the diving board. It was a back dive of some sort. So I had to walk to the end of the board and stand on the board. And I was shaking so much that the board just go. I've never experienced that.
Yeah.
Like the fear.
Right.
Where's this fear coming from? And having to overcome that was such a cool thing. Once again, I wish I could have reflected on that time because I think it would have served me well in life.
Yeah.
But if nothing else, at some level I learned that lesson that you can overcome this. It's in your head.
Right.
At some point, I mean, we've all heard this, mind over matter.
Yep.
And I kind of always firmly believed in that. We can overcome so much with our minds, and that was one point where I was like, I gotta figure this out or quit the team,
Right.
at some point. And I ended up being quite a successful diver, but not based on talent. That was hard work.
Yeah. Yeah. Overcoming the fear is I mean, that's the trick, and that's what keeps us down. And I'm just constantly amazed at how crafty the brain is. You know what I mean? Like how good it is at figuring out your weakness and what little thought's gonna pop up that's gonna be the one that gets you to go back on the couch. You know what I mean? I have a theory. I don't know if you'll like this one, but I think there's a spectrum of people that succumb to fear, right? There's people that are just afraid of everything, and then there's people, I probably think of like snowboarders or like, you know, X game type people that just, they don't have a fear center. You know what I mean? I'm guessing, but like
thrill seeking.
Yeah, like they can see right past all of the risks, and they can only see the adrenaline rush and
or they're like a junkie on
right
that feeling that they're always trying to chase.
Yeah, and whatever that, you know, the fear is just not as loud. You know what I mean? And then when I see people do crazy stuff, stunts, divers, you know, snowboarders, stuff like that, I always kind of think, yeah, they probably don't have much of a fear center. I could be completely wrong. Maybe they just have gone through a lot of work to manage it. But I think there's definitely a spectrum. You know what I mean? I think you're further along on that spectrum than I am. Like I think you, and this isn't taken away from anything that you do, but I see you go through things where, like we've talked about sharks, where sharks for a lot of people keeps them out of the water. You know what I mean? It's an irrational fear if you just look at statistics, but it's enough to keep people from doing things in the water. And like your response was like almost like, how close could I get to a shark and still be okay? You know what I mean? Like there's this like there's a little bit of the adventure seeking in you that allows you, one, knows that you're taking a calculated risk, you're gonna be fine, but you kind of want. Whereas I'm still on the spectrum of like I let that fear, you know, take me over. And I've said this before. Like open water swimming is still I have not mastered it yet. Right. Like I haven't even come close. It's on my list. I know I have to do it because I know I'm safe in the water. I know I'm going to be fine. But when I get in there, if it's not a pool, I still have that fear center that's triggering and prohibiting me from doing stuff. So that's on my list of things to tackle. Right. But it's funny to think about how people react to fear. Right. You know what I mean? Right. But regardless of where you are on that spectrum, you can always progress a little bit. You know what I mean? Because you can figure out which fears are liars. You know what I mean? Most of them are, and train yourself almost like a mantra to like get over that. You know what I mean? And that has absolutely come up in the 50 milers. You know what I mean? Like the fear of you're not gonna be able to finish, or you're gonna hurt yourself, or you know this is stupid. Like why are you even doing this? Those are just like lies that your brain's telling you to get you to stop, and you can figure out how to overcome that. You know.
Yeah, our bodies are designed to survive, and our brains want us to
stay away from it.
Right. Very cool. All right, let's move on. Okay, nutrition. So once again, early thoughts, nutrition, when that became even a thought in your brain, and then how it's kind of progressed to where you are now, and then where do you point people?
This is
so the great unknown.
Nutrition tracks the same arc. You know what I mean? So, and I bet you have a similar experience. So, high school football, weight training, total meathead diet, bodybuilder type diet, high protein, low fat. You know, it was all about pre-workout, post-workout shakes. You know what I mean? And this was the 90s, so that was common, right? People that were into exercise, you know, they were cutting out fats. You know what I mean? They thought fat was was a bad thing. Tons of protein, you know, high protein, lean chicken breasts, you know, boiled salmon, all that kind of stuff, white rice. And so that's what I did growing up.
So what about before that? Like family?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think it was something we talked about. I mean, I definitely was blessed to grow up in a family that always sat around the dinner table, prepared meals. Both my parents were amazing cooks, so we always ate well. You know what I mean? Ate good food, but it was, you know, casserole. There was no like nutritional element to it. I got treats. I mean, we definitely weren't, you know, eating takeout 24/7 and sugary cereals or anything like that. You know what I mean? There was a common sense in the family that, you know, we had to eat balanced and all that kind of stuff, but there was no,
Right.
you know, restrictions really to speak of, that kind of thing. But I wanted to, in high school, I wanted to get into really good shape, and so there was like a group of guys. I remember there was one guy that I trained with who was in great shape, and I was at a Dunkin' Donuts at like 9 o'clock at night hanging out, and I had a bagel in my hand. He came up and slapped the bagel out of my hand. He's like, "You can't eat that stuff." So like there was this, you know, meathead mentality of what bodybuilding nutrition looked like, and I carried that through most of my 20s and didn't really play around with it much. But what I definitely knew looking back was that I had a sense that whatever I was eating, and I was eating pretty disciplined and at least adhering to some sort of plan, I was leaving something on the table. Like it just wasn't, like I didn't feel like I was like, I should be bigger, stronger, leaner, feel better. I should feel better. Like I was still, you know, you'd have a lunch, even like a nice balanced lunch, and I would have that 2 o'clock crash, you know what I mean? So that all the way through my 20s and 30s, well, and then there was the period of time where I ate whatever I wanted and just kind of let myself go. And then as I started getting back on this train and the arc was coming up, I started playing around with more diets, and that CrossFit was getting to be a big deal when I was getting out of the military, and they have I think predominantly like a paleo style diet, right, which I always encourage everybody to start there. That would be the diet that I think is the most easiest to adhere to, the most balanced. It makes sense. It's just real food. You know what I mean? Yeah. Meats, less vegetables, less fruit. Yeah, no processed stuff. I mean, that's stuff.
In general, the more you can eliminate processed.
Yeah, exactly. And so I started playing around with paleo and saw improvements. Like I was, you know, and that they do encourage healthy fats. You know what I mean? Nuts and avocados and you know, coconut oils and olive oils. So as I started taking in more fat, I just felt better. And I don't know if there's any science to support this, but I felt like my joints were greased. You know what I mean? I had typically, like when I would weight lift, I would have a lot of soreness in my shoulders, and the more fat that I took on, I felt like that kind of went away. So then at about that time, keto started becoming a thing. And I was like, this is interesting. 80% of your calories from fat, like that was completely contradictory to everything I learned in the 90s. Right. Fat's going to give you health, you know, disease, cardiovascular problems. But I you know, I was in this experimenting thing. I was like, I'll do it for 20, 30 days. And as soon as I got into it, and I got keto flu really bad the first couple times I played around with it, like really bad. Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah, like the first 7 days.
Thanks for warning me as I've tried it.
No, yeah. Just push you off the cliff. When you go and you completely cut out, especially if you have a lot of sugars, you know, in your normal diet, you cut out all the carbohydrates and sugars, your body hasn't kicked into ketosis, so it doesn't, it's like scrambling for energy, you know what I mean? Right. It hasn't become efficient in tapping into your fat sources. So it basically is like you don't have any energy. And the keto flu is just like the feeling that you're lethargic, you have no energy.
Headaches.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and then once you get on the other side of that, now your body is in ketosis. It's taking the fat stores that you've already stored up and using them for energy, and then when my experience, clearly not everybody's the same, but my experience was once you get into that period of ketosis where you're burning fat, and I also have the philosophy that your brain loves fat, and if this entire experience is about training the brain, you know what I mean, and your brain is control of your emotions and everything else, and your brain is fed on fat and really likes it, my mental clarity improved, my focus improved, I wasn't having midday crashes, I had sustained energy, so I was like, I'm in, you know what I mean? And so from then, it's probably been 2 or 3 years now, I've done some modified versions of keto, and from a performance perspective, I've never felt better. You know, I don't crave carbs, I don't feel like they're important. We play around with them in our ultra training, just sheerly out of the amount of calories that we're burning and trying to figure out what the optimal balance is. But what with all that said, so I've done everything, every type of diet, you know what I mean? Looking back, we don't know, there's so much we don't know about nutrition, and there's so much that we got wrong early, on.
Right.
You know what I mean? The food pyramid, you know what I mean? The fats are the, you know, the culprit, all that kind of stuff. And I have a philosophy, in addition to this thought about when you're on the diving board and you overcame that fear, but you didn't necessarily analyze or have the mind-body connection. I think that we have generations of people that didn't live on healthy fats, that just cut them out and replaced them with processed stuff. And I think that's done long-term damage to our brain. I really do.
And fast food.
Yeah. I mean, and so feeding the brain in a way that, you know, that we just should, if you just take all the noise away from modern day America, you know, we should be living off the land. You know what I mean? And whether you believe in eating meat or not, it doesn't matter. But like vegetables and nuts and just real food, that makes the entire system, which is a system and everything relies on each other, better. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you have a better day. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're more resilient. So, but I'm excited because my nutrition quest is far from over. You know what I mean? I have so many ideas about, and so the last piece to that was fasting, which we just put in,
because that's, to me, has been the most
game changer.
Yeah.
We eat way too much. So again, back in the 60s, as the 90s, it was 6 small meals a day every 2 to 3 hours. That was, you know what I mean? So, and the science on fasting, I don't have it at my fingertips, but it's pretty compelling, both in longevity, so like cellular rejuvenation, like when your body's not eating, it's going back to work on dead cells. So I think there's a longevity aspect to it. But also just like your natural rhythms, you know what I mean? Like we just weren't designed to have food at our fingertips 24/7, you know? Yeah. So, and then fasting is not only, I think, a nutritional benefit, and all this, you know, buyer beware, right? You know, do your own research, figure your own stuff out. But I think fasting is something beneficial to play around with, both for your health, but also, again, for mental toughness.
It all comes back to
right. So we've both done a 72-hour, 3-day fast.
Okay, 5.
Oh, jeez, so I'm already behind. You've done a 5? When did
I told you about it. Yeah, I did 5.
Yeah.
Well, that was interesting.
You know, it's the same scenario as like being a creative. Like you want to go write a book and you get up against the white paper and you stop and you go get distracted and you go do other things. Well, we fill that void with food a lot. You know what I mean? So 3 days with no food, just water, and you're trying to do work and stuff, and you start having that hunger pain, or you're like gravitating. So I should just go grab a handful of nuts. Even if you're eating healthy, there's still this reaction to, and it's comfort in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like I'm bored or I'm stressed, I'm just gonna go comfort myself with some nutrition, some food. And when you force yourself to remove yourself from that outlet, you then have to deal with it. You have to like be like, all right, I don't need this food. I've got to go back to the task at hand, and that's just all part of the cycle of training your brain to do things it doesn't want to do.
Right.
As long as you believe, I think, as long as you're being conscious about the restriction is beneficial for you. You know what I mean? Like we're not masochistic here. We're not trying, maybe a little bit, but we're not just trying to put ourselves into pain unnecessarily. There's always some sort of like objective to what we're doing, but yeah. So high fat fasting, I mean, I'm sticking to that for a long time, and I my preference is if I can do 1 meal a day, that's my preference. I feel the best on it. Takes out the complication of having to do food planning or any of that kind of stuff, but that is hard. By 1 o'clock, I'm usually struggling a little bit. Some days are better than the other. So I've got this plan post this race to change some things. I want to do I'm going to try and work on a power shake for like 3 p.m. just to kind of get me, and then do that 1 meal at 5 or 6.
Right.
I'm going to do that for a while and see how it goes. Because the other thing too with fasting and with keto is I definitely feel like I'm neglecting some important like vitamins and amino acids and different things that I probably could just throw into a shake to make sure I get all of it.
Right.
Yeah.
We're both trying not to lose weight at this point.
Right. No, yeah,
so
yeah.
that becomes Like if I'm fasting, one meal a day, I can maintain, and we'll talk about this in a sec, but there's a point where I'm starting to lose weight, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to. I gotta find, for me, I have to find that balance where, okay, I'm staying where I'm at.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe I'm adding in a like you said, 3 o'clock shake or 3 o'clock little snack or just something
Right.
to find that balance. And I'm just trying to,
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to find.
Yeah. I've always, so a couple things. One, if you haven't started yet, start now. Even if you're 40, 50, doesn't matter. Start now. But it is really important to start. Yeah, like the younger you can start, the better. Because what I've also learned is, when you stick to it for a long period of time, you will understand your body and what your body needs. Like I remember Schwarzenegger would talk about it, how he just knew, like, throughout his training, what needed improvement, what nutrition was lacking. Like you just get in tune with your body. Right. And so like I can go 3-4 days and be like, yeah, I need to maybe up the vegetables or restrict this, or you know what I mean? And you can figure your body out eventually, right?
Right.
When you first get started, you have no clue. Right. And you also just think you're just suffering. You're just like, I just want to eat cookies, you know what I mean? But over a period of time, I don't know how long that is, but over some period of time, you'll be able to figure your body out. And which also does give you some freedom, because I can let things slide for a little period of time, and then I can clean it back up very quickly. I'm like, all right, I gotta, you know, that was a rough weekend, you know, it's time Monday, let's tighten it up a little bit, you know, so.
And I found, which I think a lot of people would benefit from this if they kind of start doing some of this fasting, and I feel better hungry than I do full.
I don't know, isn't that crazy?
Like if I eat to full, no, you know, I'm miserable right after, like, ugh. And then I get sit on the couch for 2 or 3 hours.
Right.
But I can go with no food, and sure, like my brain goes, oh, you're hungry, you go get something, and then as soon as I like mentally commit, I'm not gonna get something, that goes away.
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel great. And then, so my first 3-day fast, I didn't really push exercise that hard. My second, I still did some exercising. My second 3-day fast, I did full 3-hour workouts every day.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a drop off in it. I mean, top end performance, I'm sure I definitely lost some in speed, you know, explosiveness, for sure. But I was able to do all those workouts. Yeah. And now I've done a 5-day fast, and the 5-day, it starts to, there's definitely a decline after 3.
Yeah.
But it's like, we've talked about this, the wants and needs. There's no doubt that, like I have one cookie and I want another, and my brain, like everything in my body is like, yeah, go get another. Yeah. Like, that's just sugar calling me. That's just my brain trying to trick me in, you know. Right. And you know, every time that hunger comes up now, it's like, do I really need to eat? And the answer is no. Yeah. Almost every time.
Right.
And that knowledge that if I haven't really put this into practice so well, but knowing that if I eat more, I'm gonna feel worse.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's like skipping a workout, right? You know what I mean? You're like, well, it would be nice right now to get comfortable and skip it, but you'll feel worse knowing that you didn't do it than if you actually just go through it, you'll feel better. Same thing goes with nutrition. Right. And I also just think fasting, and I also hate buzzwords, but whatever, you gotta call it something. It actually gives you a lot of freedom. So if you're trying to adhere to some sort of diet, you know what I mean, some sort of plan. So like I know, like, especially if I'm traveling for work and I go to a business meal and, you know, there's no food there that is what I would like to eat or should eat, I'll just skip it. You know what I mean? Like you know, if I know I've got a busy day and I'm gonna be, you know, off traveling or something like that, I'll just be like, I'll just eat tonight when I can go get something that I want. And there's gonna be it's not going to be detrimental to my focus or to my energy, and it just gives you more freedom to not feel like you have to be compelled to eat all the time, and whatever's in front of you, you're like, oh, I haven't eaten in 10 hours, I might as well, everybody else is eating, you know, pizza, I might as well grab a piece of pizza. Right. So it does free you up in a lot of ways, but it takes some discipline. I don't know. I actually really like nutrition. I like playing around with it.
Right.
I like the way I feel when I eat clean, so I don't struggle. I don't think, and I have cheat days. Even on keto, when I first started keto, I went really strict because I felt that when I broke out of ketosis, getting back into it was a struggle. So I was like, I might as well just stay off of it. But now, especially with the training that we're doing, you know, I'll have a Sunday where I just eat whatever I want.
Right.
So it's, you know,
And,
you still have to enjoy life.
and
You know?
fasting too, combined with keto, get you into ketosis. It
Yeah.
helps you
Yep.
stay in. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. There's a social aspect to food that is. So we just had a company meeting, and it's funny. Like they didn't, like we're it's Friday, so 2 days out from this race. You know, I'm trying to be, and even though the taper week,
Yeah.
that's just a roll of dice. Like I have not mastered that at all. But I was like, I definitely don't want. They had wraps and they had a pasta soup thing, and I'm like, I just don't want anything here. But I didn't want to go to the table and sit down and not have food and just be that awkward guy either. So like
That's weak.
I grabbed. But there is a socialness too.
I've done it. It's so unbelievably uncomfortable.
Well, I ended up grabbing one of the meat wraps and pulled out and just ate the meat, but I feel like there's a certain amount of, you know, I feel this from D and I used to have some issues with this, like I'm doing this, she should do this, or you know that you're putting these pressures on other people.
Yeah.
Like, oh, look at Benny's eating, like
Right.
I do feel bad putting those pressures on people when they're not asking for it. And,
Right.
you know, like, oh, you're gonna eat that? You have a cake over there, and I'm not eating it. Yeah,
Right.
that's the last thing I want to do.
I know,
but I also like I'm gonna do me.
Right. I've gotten past that. I went to a conference in Boston, and you know, there was a luncheon. Everybody sits down, and they serve you your plates, and it was like three plates and stuff. And I wasn't eating. I was doing one meal that day, and so there was 8 of us. We were all chit chatting, and they would put a plate down, and then they would take it away full. And I get it. It is awkward, and people would be like, "You're not eating?" And I'd be like, "No, I only eat one meal a day." And I'm not trying to be a jerk about it, but at some point you do have to kind of do you.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it is very awkward. Fortunately, the guys that I work with, they all know what I'm doing, so you know they're like, "Oh." And that night, I went to a steakhouse. There was like 10 of us at the table, and I got the biggest steak on the menu, and that was all I ate that night, and I ate it like in 2 minutes. It was awesome. It felt great.
Right.
And so, I mean, at the end of the day, when you think about it, like, is it worth compromising your goals and objectives because of how other people feel? You know what I mean?
Right.
And by all means, I don't mean being a jerk or like proselytizing this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, if people want to talk about this, they'll get 3 hours. Right. You know what I mean? I'll give it to them. But if they don't want to talk about it, then it's like I don't have any expectation that you're going to understand what we're trying to do here. And you know, it's just I'm not trying to indict you for, you know,
Right.
eating the cheesecake, but I'm not going to let that pressure me into, you know, that on the nutrition side, I think I'm pretty comfortable with.
Right.
You know,
There's it's something else that I wish people knew. So, how good it feels to do what we're doing, how good it feels, how fast it feels better than full, and then the thing that I think is missing most is, so like, if you tell somebody you can go, we're going to give you a gift card to go to this super high-end restaurant, or McDonald's. What are you going to pick? Well, I want to go have a special meal.
Yeah.
You want to make any meal amazing, fast for 3 days.
Yeah.
Whatever you're having next, that
Yeah.
first thing you do eat
Yeah.
after 3 days.
Yeah.
Or even just a day.
Yeah.
Like you just said, like
Yeah.
you go through the day. I heard Lex Friedman on one of his podcasts, and he was talking about how anytime he's going to go out to dinner, he always fasts
Yeah.
to that dinner.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, how brilliant is that? Because it doesn't matter what it is. It just tastes amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think there's actually science that shows that when you're doing that, what you consume when you break your fast, it's less important, right? So you can be a little bit more lenient on, right? So if you're going out and maybe there's pasta to dinner or like dessert, whatever, if you're fasting regularly, the body's a little bit less concerned about what you're putting in.
Right.
Now, I mean, if you're training, you stick to your diet.
Right.
But yeah, that's the other thing. Like if I know I got a big Thanksgiving dinner coming up or something like that, like, you know, one, it makes food taste amazing. Like, and not just amazing, but like really amazing. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, if nothing else, just try it. You know what I mean? Because
It's like
you'll
borderline orgasm.
Yeah, you'll be surprised.
Really, like it's like
yeah.
like I put a whatever it is and it goes in your mouth and it's like, and you just want to sit there with it, like on your taste
And
buds.
you also don't want to, when you do that, you don't want to cheapen it with cheap food. You know what I mean? Like you want a good meal. You know what I mean? So, and I enjoy that. You know what I mean? Like if you do a hard training session in the morning, a full day of work, it's 6 o'clock. You haven't been watching your watch for dinner time. You just get through the day and you're productive, and then you can sit down and enjoy food. That's the best day for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of science that supports that you sleep better on fasting. You know, I've actually started trying to eat. I would eat right up until 8 o'clock, which is when my cutoff would be, and then I'd be in bed by 9. You know what I mean? I've been trying to pull that back because I think there's something that shows that if you have a longer window from when you eat to when you go to sleep, you sleep better. You know what I mean? So that's. I fortunately have really good. I sleep really well. So and I know a lot of people struggle with that. So that exercise, nutrition, and sleep are huge. You know what I mean? I think I'm just naturally okay on sleep, which is good. But it also is probably very much connected to what we're putting in the day.
Right.
You know what I mean? That we're working hard, and you've earned your sleep at that point.
So my arc is so different than yours.
Really?
Oh, we're not even close. Yeah. So early on, so my mother got her master's degree in nutrition. And even before that, obviously she was all interested in nutrition early on, and I was the house that my friends would give me a hard time. Oh, Ben's got healthy crap at his house, which literally just meant we had yogurt.
Yeah, back then that's what that meant. Yeah.
and we didn't have sugar cereals.
Right.
For the most part.
Right.
But yeah, we were considered kind of the healthy family. But so swim meets, every swim meet afterwards we hit McDonald's. Every travel anywhere we hit some fast food place. Pretty much for every sport. I never once paid attention. High school football, never once. I could eat whatever I wanted. I mean, cereal. I'd come home and have like 2 frozen pizzas and gallon of milk, you know, like just anything, everything. And I was always like ridiculously thin.
Yeah.
You know, low body fat. I was just.
That drives most people crazy.
At that time, I mean, I was so active. I mean, literally, like, even before high school, like, I mean, every day was out. My mother's phrase that she always would say, "It's too nice of a day." I don't even know what that means.
Oh yeah.
You break
Get
down
outside.
But the words like it's too nice, like it's too nice, like. But yeah, so I was in the woods playing. We had across the street there was a guy. We'd always play baseball or tag, or it would just nonstop go all day long every day. And even once I got in high school, you know, besides the video game phases, I was just stupid active.
Yeah.
So I was just burning so much, and that didn't change until after meeting D.
Yeah.
And be, you know, and I hadn't put on a lot of weight. Literally, I mean, you could look at the arc as my exercise went down.
Yeah.
That started to catch up with me.
Right.
Obviously.
Right.
Like that's a pretty simple equation. So, but I never once paid attention to anything. I mean, I remember JD and I, we were workout partners in high school all the time, and we'd get on the scale every time we go to the weight room. We were trying to gain weight, like we couldn't. Like,
Yeah. Right.
I could get muscle to go up.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that all caught up with me. So the shakes and none of that.
It didn't work.
Eat eggs and I just whatever the heck I wanted,
Right.
whenever I wanted. And then it became, when it became apparent that I needed to change something, then I started looking at where I could cut back. And the first big thing was I had started eating cereal for lunch. I would always have, I was working in an architectural firm, and I'd have, every day at lunch I'd have a large sub with a bag of chips and a Coke.
Yeah.
I mean, couple thousand calories right
Yeah,
there, boom.
yeah.
And then I just decided, I switched to, let's have a bowl of cereal, which I love cereal, I've always been a big fan. Honey Bunches of Oats was my thing. And, but one bowl of cereal with milk was 260 calories. Like
right.
I've just cut off
Right.
1,700 calories like that
Yeah.
for something I'm just as happy with.
Yep.
And then that's where, for me, my diet journey was just like, oh, where else can I cut things?
Yeah.
Oh, can I cut this? Like I switched to Diet Coke, which, yeah, that's
Yeah,
its
yeah.
own different thing. But I was kind of, I would just look at the calorie. I mean, my mother, I'd always run things by my mother. I'm like, this diet fat, this diet, and she'd always be like, at the end of the day, how much you burn and how much you take in.
Right.
So it's like, okay, so I was just focused on literally that calorie count,
Yeah.
even though I wasn't. There was a point where I had lost a lot and I wanted to lose more. Where I did start to like really start tracking calories.
Right.
And
Well, that's where everybody should start. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
just less calories in than calories out. You know what I mean?
it really is the simple equation. And
Right.
finding
Start there.
and finding things that you can. I think too many people try to like big picture, try to like go right in.
Right.
Where that little change for me, it was just one little change, or like more recently switching to darker chocolates. You know, instead of a milk chocolate, trying to reduce the sweetness of like tea or whatever. Like let's kind of get into brewed tea, you know, and unsweetened, and just looking for little places. And then once, like the dark chocolate's a good example. I'm starting to really enjoy dark chocolate.
Yeah.
And the milk chocolate is kind of disgusting to me at this point.
I'm sitting right with you.
Like it's too sweet. It's shockingly sweet. Like, ugh, I don't want that. And so you can kind of train your body into liking things that are a healthier option, and just those little, all those little changes that snowball. But yeah, so I never did any of the workout kind of meathead stuff.
Yeah.
Like it was just like whatever.
Right.
Put it in me.
Right.
I used to joke with my mom. I'm like, I'm gonna open a restaurant. That's because like the '90s, you know, all the diet fad, everything was counting calories. You know, I'm like, I'm gonna open a restaurant that has we're gonna have the most calories, the most everything, which I believe Taco Bell ended up kind of doing. So the arc is kind of different there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember you said we were at the beach this summer. You're like post workout. I said, what do you, or pre workout? That's what it was.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I never heard of that.
I've never heard that phrase.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm sure I've heard it bantered around, but never even thought about that.
Well, it's funny when you start playing around with nutrition, when you start to realize, this is my experience, but you start to realize what is completely unnecessary and what is essential. You know what I mean? Like honestly, I don't do supplements. I did all the supplements all the time. You know what I mean? Creatine, the pre-workouts, the you know, the amino acids, all that stuff. Because that's what I was told. Yeah, that's what I was told to do, and other people had success doing it, and so I went for it. Don't do any of that kind of stuff anymore. And I believe that all the things that you need are in real food, right? Figuring out what the right real foods are for you, but it's all right there. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, when was that you? So, you were doing a lot of small triathlons at the time that you were starting to like cut some things out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Getting healthy, losing weight, exercising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I started just. It was just running. Like literally, like around the block, less than a mile.
Yeah.
Was brutal to me, and there was a point where I decided, okay, I'm gonna do a little bit more than this, and I took the dog, and I'd run with the dog, and then drop him off, and then I'd run this. I'd do another loop.
Yeah.
And then there was a point where I realized the second loop feels better than the first, which I think a lot of people never. There's no doubt there's that. For me, it's the first couple miles.
Yep.
Are the hardest miles of the whole.
Yeah.
Whatever length.
Right.
Up to a point.
Yep.
We're starting to get in the 30s and 40s.
It's off again.
It starts going the other way. But
I'll tell you a little bit about my 42nd mile yesterday.
yeah, so and so I started, I was building on my runs. I think I got up till maybe like 5. I was doing like a 5 mile loop. And actually when we started building this house, there's a 7 mile road, which is uphill both ways, as we discussed yesterday.
Yeah.
I was doing that, and then I saw our triathlon the University of Maine had a sprint triathlon. And I had been swimming a little bit here and there. And I was like, oh, I know how, like, I hadn't had any experience on the bike as far as racing goes, but it's like riding a bike. You know, I know how to do it.
Right.
So I'll just swim, bike, and then see in the runs a distance that I could do. So I tried it.
Yeah.
And it was fun, and yeah. But I wasn't, but then there was like 8-year gap before I did another one or so. But I did a marathon in between there, which was, I've told you, was the darkest I've ever been. And it's, like the base jumpers or whatever, that are chasing that adrenaline rush. Like I've been chasing that feeling. Getting done and bawling my eyes out, not knowing why I'm bawling, pushing through the pain that I did, and just the overwhelming gratefulness of life, of everything. It's just
if you haven't cried on a run yet, then you still have some work to do. That's what I say. You haven't emptied the tank yet.
And it's a cool thing. It's liberating in a weird way.
I remember mine.
Yeah, some of my arcs are different than yours.
Yeah, and actually I think that's a pretty normal arc. You know what I mean? Especially for anybody that has, you know, if you're not struggling with weight, or you know, your desire to lose weight, and you're just, you know, average guy feeling okay about your waistline and all that kind of stuff. You know, you eat a standard American diet. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you can even do that and feel like you're doing okay. You know what I mean? And that's my big thing. Again, back to the mental health side of stuff. You know, and mental health is a loaded word, but I'm just talking about like improving your mental capacity. Like I think nutrition is directly tied to it. And even though you're waking up and having an egg sandwich for breakfast and a sandwich for lunch and, you know, some lasagna for dinner, and you're not gaining weight and you feel okay, you know what I mean? You feel okay. I don't know that we completely understand exactly what kind of long-term damage that's doing to like our behavior, like how we act as humans, and playing around with that has been a huge improvement. You know what I mean? But I mean, all that said, I'm gonna keep saying this, like it's still a work in progress. Like I still have very bad days. Like I still struggle with a lot of, you know, insecurities, fears, things that drag me down on a regular basis. I feel better equipped, and I can tell because I'm trying to pass that on to my kids.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like my kids are all healthy. We eat well. I don't really care what path they take in life. You know what I mean? Like they can eat whatever they want, or they can eat really clean. It doesn't matter. All I want them to understand is the connection between their food and their life, and to be aware of, to spend that time early on being like, okay, I just ate pizza 7 days in a row. How do I feel?
Absolutely.
You know, is there something else I could do instead of that? You know what I mean? And just being aware of both the amount of calories you're taking, the composition of your food, and playing around with it. Like I have, you know, some kids are like, I don't like lactose, or, you know what I mean, I feel better when I do this, or just be aware of it. You know what I mean? And the earlier you can start that, the better, because when you're just becoming aware of your nutrition when you're 40, you can still fix it.
Right.
You absolutely can. But you just lost 20 years of playing scientist with your body chemistry, you know? So start early. But if not, just play around with stuff. And the other thing too is just, you got to stick with it. You know what I mean? Like, just like you said, the first mile of every run I've ever run has always sucked. Maybe once in a while I'll be like, well, this is feeling good. But in general, it's so if I quit every time I didn't feel good, I would never get past that first mile.
Right.
Same thing goes with nutrition.
Or if you've only run 1 mile.
Right. Yeah, that's where a lot of people stop.
You're just in the misery of it.
Right.
Yeah. The one thing that Logan's kind of brought to me, my little deep thinker, my daughter, talking with her friends and kind of relaying some of these ideas, and the friends that are struggling with weight, and fasting's come up, and she's like, but anorexia and those problems. Like,
100%.
and it's,
Yeah.
and I don't know where that, how, I've never been there, like where
Right.
that balance gets out of control the other way.
Right.
And that's kind of, yeah, I haven't wrapped my brain around that because and I don't know how I could.
Right.
Like,
It's worth talking about, and I think that it's in today's culture is a huge problem. You know what I mean? Like, I remember in the '90s, like the whole cover model problem. Like that was the beginning of when people started to talk about how we need to accept our bodies the way that they are. You know what I mean? Because all you ever saw was these cover models, and it was unattainable, and so we went through a decade or two of like being like, just be happy with who you are. What I like to say is, be happy with the body you've been given because it's your body and you're the only one, right? You're not going to get anybody else's body. You have to, this is your vessel for the rest of your life and you have to take joy in it, you know what I mean? But that doesn't mean you can't continue to improve it,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Right.
And there's healthy ways to be restrictive with your diet that are having enormous net benefits to your physical, mental, and spiritual health. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, but I agree. You know what I mean? That's why you got to be careful who you're talking to. You know what I mean? I'm very sensitive to that, to my girls and stuff. That, and I think I talk about it enough where they know that I'm not criticizing what they put on their plate. I'm not restricting them. I'm having an open conversation about, do you know what's in salmon? You know what I mean? Salmon's mostly fat. Does that make you feel good? You know what I mean? Do you know what's in pasta? Do you know what's in, you know what I mean? Like, just be aware of these things and make your own decisions. But yeah, I think you're right. I mean, you got to be careful not to push people into a place where they're making unhealthy decisions. Right. This is all about health.
Right. And like the other thing too is if your kids are struggling on it, having a hard time focusing on homework or whatever. It's like, what did you have to? You
Right.
know, is that playing a role?
Right.
And the more you can be, the more we're, like you said, Schwarzenegger, focusing and knowing what your body needs, and then starting to learn what makes you feel worse. When you've been eating clean, and then you're obviously, all of a sudden you're feeling bad about something, or something's off.
Yeah.
It almost always relates back to the food.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like my house, we have candy, cookies, sweets. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm, we're on vacation. I let things go. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not in any ways restricting them. I'm usually having a conversation about what we just did. Like, you know what I mean? Like, why we did it, and how does it make you feel? That kind of stuff. And so, and they're very, very aware of. We went camping with my two high school buddies, John and Andrew. We got the families together. We went out camping at the lake and stuff. And I stuck to my diet. I think I told you I was really clean the whole way through. One meal a day. Only ate keto at the end of the day. And John, who's hilarious, was really making fun of me. You know what I mean? Like just going at me. And like my kids were laughing like hysterically because they knew it was true. You know what I mean? They know how I live and the disciplines and the sacrifices that I make. But I hope they see it in a positive way.
Right.
Not that like dad's ruining my childhood or you know what I mean. It's just like he's accomplishing something. He's got some clear goals and objectives, and I think they're proud of it. You know what I mean, which is cool. But you gotta let them enjoy life too.
Yeah, that inspired me so the beach has always been like Dee and I will go to the beach for the week with the kids, and we'll stay in a hotel. It's free breakfast, so like I paid for this breakfast.
Right.
I'm gonna get my money's worth. So I go in, have that, and then on vacation I eat lunch, whatever, I have. And I just kind of let go. And this year I was like, after hearing what you were planning, I didn't eat.
Yeah.
Felt better. Like,
Right.
It was just an awesome there was no craving, it was great.
Well, so again, back to this whole like trying to be better at every aspect of your life through wellness, exercise, nutrition, all that kind of stuff. Like, so I have 4 kids. When I have them by myself. We'll go for a long vacation or whatever. If I just let go and I eat whatever I want, I get agitated, cranky, tired, and then I start snapping at my kids. You know what I mean? And you think you're on vacation, just let loose, and there's times to do that. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I also know, like, okay, this could be a stressful environment for me, so I might as well take a couple of other stressors off the table. You know what I mean? So I'm going to eat clean, feel good, and then I have more patience. I have, more energy, and that I can enjoy the kids, and they would rather have me be joyful than be well fed. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Right.
and I've noticed an enormous. I think a really good relationship with my kids. We have the best time, and I've seen it get better in this window in which we've been training hard and doing what we're doing.
Right.
I have more personal peace in my life that I can feel like I'm doing everything I can to be a better man, and that plays out when you're with your kids. And kids could be a challenge. You know what I mean?
Well,
Of course.
I was just gonna say it's saying something because you got teenage daughters.
Yeah, yeah.
Not many fathers could say the teenage years they're getting better.
I think so. You know what I mean? I think I'm very blessed, but I also think that if boil it back to not even the nutrition and exercise, but like if you're a parent and you're 24/7 stressed about your job, your relationships, and you're just on high alert 24/7, like how kids will max you out. You know what I mean? And that's the cycle. You know what I mean? Because then you either withdraw from the kids or you get cranky around them, and then they're just like sponges. You know what I mean? So they're just gonna react, and so I think that's part of why, like I said, it's all about mind, body, and spirit, performance and improvement, so that every aspect of your life can improve. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if one thing's going well, that is gonna be like, oh, I had a great weekend with the kids. We got the best out of it. Like, they're happy, I'm happy. Now I can go focus on work. You know what I mean? As opposed to being like, that was a terrible weekend. Everybody was mad at each other, and now I've got to go to work.
Right. Right.
So, now I'm gonna say it one more time, and then a dozen more times after that. I am still a mess. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. It's all
Like,
in progress.
And people that know me are probably like, that guy's got some stuff he's still got to work out. And I had a bad summer, and we won't get into that on this one. But I'm going through some stuff.
Right.
So it's not the chaos of life does not ever subside.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just try to be more resilient to get through it. That's the goal.
Right. Yep. Awesome. Education, career.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So, what was? I'm interested. We've kind of touched on it a little bit, but your education. You said you were kind of like a middle of the pack student. I'm interested. Like I said, your arc, but then also, what is education like at West Point? The military education, because there's a lot of people considering military and don't know what it's about. Kind of like you said your junior year, which I was kind of blown away by that. I kind of figured you were locked in early on because it's such a hard thing to get into. West Point,
never heard of it.
Yeah, and then what's your thoughts? Maybe what you do differently, or what you've learned, or
This one could get deep. I'll try not to.
That's right. I'm realizing right now we're not going to get through all these topics.
That's right.
So there's definitely another podcast.
We got another one coming up. I got plenty of time. So I was middle of the pack student, but that was because when it came to studying, I was very lazy. So
our arc is the same.
Okay, good.
At least at the beginning.
My entire life, I can say with certainty that, and this is not something I'm proud of, but I'm very good at figuring out the bare minimums that are required to achieve a level that I'm okay with. You know what I mean? So, I graduated from West Point, which is a rigorous academic program, with putting in very little effort.
Oh, really?
Yeah, very little effort. Like, I was never maxed or stressed. But again, shame on me. Like, this goes back to not understanding. So another way to look at this was, my 20-year-old brain said, okay, you can cram for this test at the last minute. you're gonna pass. Don't worry about it. You don't need to excel. You just need to graduate. Nobody asks you your GPA, all that kind of stuff. The opportunity that I missed out on was learning how to put in an enormous amount of effort regardless of the outcome, right? Like, so I could work 40 hours and still get a C, or I could work 10 hours and still get a C. So I took the comfortable route, right? Doing the bare minimum. But I missed out on an opportunity to train myself to, one, put in the work regardless of the outcome. And then when you look back on it, you can look back with pride over that 4-year period where you say, yeah, I put it all out there. You know what I mean? So for a long time, I was walking that tightrope of just doing the bare minimum. And if I was being honest, it's probably be out of fear that, well, what's the point? If it would seem silly to me to put in 40 hours of work for a test to go from a C to a C plus. If I put 40 in, I could get an A. That's great, but this way I'll never know. I'll never have to know if I'm an A student or not.
You were thinking that deeply about it? Like,
well, not in hindsight, I am.
Oh, in hindsight. Okay.
But I think it was subconscious, where you're like, just like any endeavor that you take on. This is why a lot of people pull off the throttle, because they're like, but what if I give everything and I still fail? That would be embarrassing. So why don't I just give less, get an average mark, and then I can always be like, well, I could have worked harder. Right. You know what I mean? And I can look at that in every aspect of every area of my life, and that's actually really detrimental. I think that's one of the origins of regret, where you know, looking back over a 20-year window, where you're like, yeah, those are the areas that I didn't give it my all, because I was too afraid that if I gave it my all, and I might still fail. Right. And we now know life is sweeter when you give it your all and you fail than when you don't give it your all and maybe you pass a little bit. You know what I mean? Right. Like the attempt, the process is better than the outcome.
Do you think so? Early on, like, to me, I look at school, and like I was ADD before ADD was a thing, for sure. You know what I mean? Like,
I think I am too.
And there's no. I look at my 8-year-old self. There's no way I got anything out of sitting in a classroom.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
Right.
If I had to run a lap and then answer a question, run a lap and answer a question, I would be so much more focused.
Yeah.
You know, like.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like school isn't set up for the way my male brain was developing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you kind of feel that way too?
Maybe not as much, but probably because I just was. I mean, actually, in high school I did well. You know what I mean?
Right.
But also, based on very minimal effort. You know what I mean? I just kind of figured it out. Like, I was like, okay.
Right, and I'm very similar in that.
Yeah, yeah. But another thing about raising kids, which is great, is you get to see a lot of your genes at that age. So it's like almost like looking in a mirror in the past, and you're like, oh, because I'm seeing it now with some of my kids, and I'm like, oh, that was the attitude I had.
But I'm guessing your sons, not your daughters.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
See, that's what I'm.
My daughters are very studious.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the boy girl thing, and
right.
I kind of feel like school's set up for girls. Just the structure of it.
Right.
Their brains work well in that.
Yeah.
Where a young male had just, especially with testosterone hits.
Right. Yeah. But I think I didn't academically, like I said, I passed, which was great, and I got the degree, and I made, like I said, I made it harder on myself than I needed to. But actually, once I got out of West Point, I loved the military. The contrast was always that I felt like West Point treated you like a child. You know what I mean? Like, their whole thing was to try and break you down and make your life miserable and teach you discipline and all these kinds of things. You had no responsibility, and until you got higher in the ranks. But once you got in the Army, they treated you like an adult. They're like, this is what you have to do. We're going to hold you accountable and expect you to perform. And that environment, I was like, good, because I will do what I need to do. So, I enjoyed that period of time. Like I said, I just don't like being told what to do. You know what I mean? And then, West Point clearly opened a lot of doors for me. So, one, if anybody's thinking about going to the military, I always say, was it Dane Porter? Dane went in, and I remember talking to him right before, and I'm like, look, if you don't know what you want to do when you're 18, the military is going to be great for you, and it's going to open doors afterwards, and it's also just an honor and a privilege to serve. So that's always a good thing.
Right.
And so getting out of the Army, I got out of the Army in 2008, 2009. The economy had just collapsed. We were in a complete recession, and nobody was hiring, but they were hiring military, people, because they knew that there was a certain amount of discipline and execution that was valuable, right? So I had opportunities, which was great. So I still look at that, that was one of the major benefits. And then I got into oil and gas early on. My first job was with a small oil and gas company that was drilling in Montana and had gas fields in Australia. And I got exposed. I got attached to the CEO. He was awesome, my first mentor, and he showed me the global oil and gas world, and I fell in love with it. Like it's energy, is what keeps the lights on. It's extremely important, and it's continuously going through transitions that are always exciting. Right. We're in a huge transition right now away from fossil fuels into, the energy transition and renewables, and it's always been exciting to me. I knew, I was like, this is what I want to do. I got my MBA at the University of Oklahoma. Specialized in energy. It was a track specifically, so everybody that was there was typically from the oil and gas community. That I did when I was 33, 34, and even then at 34 I was still putting in the bare minimum. Really? So this is new. This is all new. You know what I mean? Where I kind of now know, what it takes to be happy with yourself and be at peace that you're putting in everything you need to put in.
Right.
But yeah, I've been doing oil and gas since, and it's been a really good career for me. It's a great industry with really like-minded people. A lot of military folks go into the oil and gas sector, and then the last 2 years I have kind of branched out on my own, self-employed, to do energy-related work. Right. And it's been really, really productive. Everything's going really well. It's a lot of work. You know what I mean? I'm very busy, but it's nice. The same last 2 years when I went self-employed was the same 2 years that I've really started to take focus and pay attention to all this kind of stuff, and it helps with work, big time. You know what I mean? We spend more time at work than we do with anything else in the world. You know what I mean? With our kids, with our wives, with you're at work more than you are anywhere else. Right. And that can consume you. It can ruin your life. It can bring you to the finish line and have you look back and be like, okay, I earned a salary. What now? What was the point of that? So being intentional about it, and same thing, okay, this new project is just one new stress. It's another ultra marathon. There'll be times when I'm gonna want to fail or want to quit, want to walk away, want to change courses. And when you develop this skill set, you can persevere through that, in a more productive way.
Was there a great teacher along the way or two?
Yeah, I've been really blessed to have great mentors. Almost all of my bosses, other than one, but several bosses, and some of which are my day-to-day mentors, which I'll call once a week and check in with, that have just been really, really helpful.
Yeah. So my school, elementary school was just a blur. I just made it through, right? There's, I just don't think I fit. I couldn't. I did well enough to pass, And then I remember clearly in I want to say 5th grade, it was in math class, and the stuff was just stupid easy. It was ridiculously easy to me that what we're doing, and the teacher at the time, Mrs. Dufoy, I think it was, she's like, she told me, she's like, you don't belong in this class. You need to be in a higher level. But I was in the lower level in the other classes. Yeah. And she went and fought for me, which, at the time, I didn't, whatever. I was literally on the minimal, whatever I had to do to get through. And math was something I always, I was, even though I was kind of ADD, I was reasonably good enough at paying attention or getting the concepts that I could apply to the test. I do well enough in the test. I never did homework. Yeah. And then they'd average off. Yeah. She pulled me out and fought for me and got me into the higher, she's like, I don't care if it doesn't fit his schedule, he belongs.
Right.
And she bumped me up, which put me on a trajectory into the higher level math, which if I had stayed in this, you know,
Right.
I'd be a senior taking Algebra 1.
Yeah.
And then my freshman year of football in the weight room, I'm working out, and my math teacher, Mr. Bailey, who's one of the best teachers I've ever had, I want to say it was Algebra 1. He was my Algebra 1 teacher. And he worked out there. Mr. Bailey was kind of this chubbier kind of guy, you know, not a very fit kind of guy.
Yeah.
Was trying to get in shape. And Jim Walsh, the head football coach, varsity football coach, comes up. And he goes, "So how's Ben as a student?" And Mr. Bailey considers a moment. He goes, if he's as good in football as he is in math, he'll be in the NFL." And that was like, that blew my, I mean, it made me look good in front of my
Right.
future varsity coach,
Yeah.
who I had as a teacher in history, which I wasn't such a good
Probably
student.
not as good.
He was like, "This is not the student I expected."
Right.
Yeah, that was pretty, but I was putting in the minimal effort across the board.
Yeah.
And the one thing that on my arc that changed a lot, didn't change my effort, but so I was dating Heather in high school, and she lived down southern Maine, and we had, you know, long distance thing, and she wanted to be an editor, right? So I'm like, "You can edit my papers."
Yeah.
But that meant I had to have the paper done in time to mail it to her.
Yeah.
She'd have to open it, have time to edit it, and then send it back to me.
Yeah.
So I had to have my paper done like a week ahead of time.
Yeah.
Minimum, more than that usually. And then I started, by just that little process of getting it done 2 weeks early, basically, I'd be sitting in class and the teacher would be like, you know, "Make sure you have this in your paper." I'd already written my paper.
Right.
Oh, I'll go put that in.
Yeah.
And I never missed on things. Like,
Right.
and I literally, like I used to joke, I learned the word procrastination.
Yeah.
Like, and then I started applying that across the board, just getting things done soon. I
Yeah.
wasn't putting in more effort.
Right.
To me, in my brain, it was like, no more effort, and I'm getting better grades.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that definitely helped me a lot. I struggled in college, especially when I was in engineering at first. Like that was above my pay grade. And then, and it, like you said, I mean, it never really changed. It was just minimal effort to get the grade. And I don't know if I felt like I could put in a lot more effort for minimal gains, where I could just kind of,
Yeah.
you know, to go from a B to a B plus.
Right.
Was it worth that extra
Right.
effort? You know, I can go have fun with my friends and,
Right.
and get the B. I'm happy.
Right.
With it.
Right.
So that didn't really change for me in school. It's funny though. So then I became a teacher, and it, like, all of a sudden, like, I wanted to learn more.
Yeah.
Like, just
Yeah.
in general, like,
Right.
and there's some, and I think it's more maturity than even becoming a teacher. Like, where I was in life is like, education was, there's so many interesting things to learn out
Right.
there.
Right.
And so it's definitely changed in me. I still don't know if a classrooms, actually online learning, I think works well for me,
Yeah.
because I can just crank through something.
Right. Right.
I took one online math class, and like I remember, I'm emailing the teacher. I'm like, "You didn't post the final." He's like, we're in the second week of the class. Yeah, I haven't written it.
Right.
So, yeah, but math, luckily for me, math came easy to me. I got it, especially once the algebra. I've talked to my girls, like, and they definitely noticed. There's a point where you hit algebra, and like a certain number of students just fall off.
Right.
Like they
Yeah.
can't, for whatever reason, that's a struggle for them wrapping their brains. Where I'm like, you guys, if you're like me, that'll be the point where you excel.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just made sense to
Right.
me, and it was, yeah, it came easy.
Yeah.
But because it came easy, I didn't put in the effort.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah. I think, I mean, a lot of this is, there is a maturity element to it where you get older and you can reflect back on things and you can, like, understand, okay, yeah, I could have done that better,
Right.
you know. And I suspect that, you know, when I end up having these conversations with my kids in their 20s, they're not going to understand what I'm saying, you know, because they're still trying to figure it out, you know, on their own. But I think one of the biggest things is, just like you said, I mean, you're like, well, why put in more effort with an incremental improvement, you know, on the outcome? And that is actually a really bad way of thinking about life, you know what I mean? And because it seeps into everything that you do, once you allow that to be, you know, you're like, well, what's the point, you know what I mean? And it's very much correlated to what we're doing on the road, which is, you know, like, I'm not gonna win anything when it comes to ultra marathons, or I'm not gonna break any records, you know what I mean? And I could go from a 9-hour 50 mile to an 8-hour 45 minute. What's the point, you know what I mean? Right. And the point is the process, you know what I mean? It's being proud of yourself for putting in all that effort, not worrying about what the outcome's going to be, and overcoming the fears and the challenges. That's the win. Right. It's not the finish line, you know what I mean? And that is life, you know what I mean? That's why I think so many people are disheartened with modern day America, because they were told, like, get a good education, get a good job, get a family, retire, have wealth, and they get to that point, and they checked all the boxes, but they don't have anything to show for it. You know what I mean? There is no arriving. You know, we don't arrive ever.
Or they don't have to.
Yeah, right. And it's like, what was the point of that? Well, it's like, well, what did you learn along the way? You know what I mean? Where did you challenge yourself? What bad things did you overcome? Yeah. Is it time out?
No, but there's a message. I have a reboot. No, don't reboot.
So, you know, that's what I try and help the kids with, like, you know, because you can get wrapped up on the test. Like, I've got to pass this test, or I've got to do this, you know what I mean? But it's like, well, let's just talk about the process, you know what I mean? Like, I don't care, you're not ever going to use algebra again in your life. I'm sorry, but you're not, you know, but can you look back on that and be like, this was very hard for me, I overcame it by putting in my maximum effort, and I wasn't really worried about the outcome. That you can apply to the rest of your life. Your A on your algebra high school test, you'll never see again, you know what I mean? But learning how to get through that process, you know, and that's what I missed out on in my younger years, you know what I mean?
I disagree with you on the algebra thing.
You still use it?
Abstract thinking.
Oh, well, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
critical problem solving, for
right,
sure.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
which is what most of high school is or should be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's...
But I'll also tell you, so this is another thing that is, I'm also enjoying this period of my life, because I've had this conversation with my kids. I don't think I should have went to West Point. So I have I would say my brother is a creative. He has a good balance between, like, the practical and the creative, but he's far more creative. I'm more on the practical side, which is why I went into the military, but I have a creative side of me that I just didn't explore when I was younger. You know what I mean? And that's where a lot of that anti-authoritarianism, I like to kind of chart my own path. Like, I don't like the masses, you know what I mean? I like to try to think differently, you know what I mean? But I never nurtured it, you know, when I was younger. I actually wanted to be an actor, which I would have probably failed at. But I wanted to go in that kind of route, and, you know, I didn't, you know, I went the practical route, you know what I mean? And God bless my dad, he did a great job of coaching me through West Point, because I called him dozens of times being like, I want to quit, like, this is not for me. Wow. I shouldn't, this is not the route that I should be on. And he walked me through it, and I'm glad that I did. But in hindsight, there's probably a different path that I could have taken that was a little bit more true to who I was as a person. What we're doing right now is allowing me to exercise that, which is cool. Right. Because now I'm like, now I can build the life that I actually want to live and be proud of. And it's not the life that looks like white picket fence, 2.2 kids, dog, and car. It's, you know, in exercising your creative brain, like, what can we do with all of this? Like, this is exciting. What can I do as a self-employed person? What can I do with my ultra marathons? You know what I mean? And, you know, maximizing that side of it. So that is what I try to explain to my kids. Like, I don't want them to have any pressure from me that you got to go become an accountant or a teacher or any of these kinds of things. Like, I would rather you take a chance on things that maybe are a little outside the box and and fail, and then maybe redirect at the time. But what I absolutely require is that when you're going down that road, you're giving it maximum effort.
Right.
Because then you won't have a regret.
Right.
You're like, I tried to become an artist, I failed, but I didn't put in the minimum. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's like the academic and the career side of things. Because I just know way too many people that are just checking the box on the career. Like they make good money, they got a good title, and they're very unhappy. You know, and I'm like, what's that worth? You know,
Right.
And I mean, I get it. Like, there's a lot of pressure. It's just like sitting at a table with an empty plate around a bunch of people that are eating lunch. Like, you don't want to be that oddball that just kind of like goes off and like, you know, lives your own weird life for a while, because there's so much social pressure to when you're gonna get married, when you're gonna have kids. Like, but it can be damaging over the course of a 30-year span if you wake up when you're 50 and you're like, I didn't do any of the things I wanted to do.
Right.
You know, so I think, and also just, I mean, I think academics are just different now. Like, college is just, for a lot of people, a waste of money. But that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, and I also look at, like, kind of when we were talking about nutrition, how a little bit of positive starts snowballing.
Yeah.
If you, like, I look back, like, at English class, if I put more effort into English class earlier on, then it makes my papers easier later. You know,
Right.
I'm not having so many grammatical errors later
Right.
on. And,
Right.
and then now when I'm typing up an email, you know, sometimes I type emails to you and I'm just so excited to get it off, and I send it and I reread it. I'm like, why didn't I reread this first? This is like, those are such stupid, but if I was just like excited to type. But it so much of, but you put in that little extra effort, it snowballs into positivity.
Yeah.
And it can go the other way.
Right.
Which, you know, there was definitely a point where I was like, I gotta make up some ground that I lost somewhere around sophomore year of high school. Actually, junior year of high school they had an honor pass, so like if you had a B or above average, you could, study halls, you didn't have to go to study halls, you could be anywhere in school.
Oh yeah.
You weren't supposed to leave school, we used to leave school.
Yeah.
But that was like, oh, I gotta have that.
Right. That's worth it.
That's the one thing for me, like dangling a carrot definitely was what would get me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I wasn't looking long term. But those positive things, pushing a little bit. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome. I can get through one more. Oh, this is kind of an interesting. So upbringing, how, you know, life growing up in your family.
Yep.
Your thoughts on it.
Keep going.
Oh, I got a lot.
Yeah, I know. I'm just curious.
You know, how your parents raised you,
Yeah.
how you're raising your kids differently or the same, or because it's pretty. I mean, we're influenced by how we're raised. You know, we don't.
Is this being recorded? I gotta be careful what I say.
I know. No, this is just for us. No, I just think it's to me it's one of those really interesting topics, and you know, and there's so many. There's no book. There's no rules like how do you raise your
Right.
kids, and
Right.
you're just doing the best you can. But there's certain things that we decide to do or not decide to do, and then we regrets and
Yeah.
and then how, and it's such an interesting, like looking back, I mean, like parenting. My parents drove us to Daytona in a station wagon with a mattress in the back that we used to sleep on during the
Yeah.
drive.
Yeah.
There's no seat, not only no seatbelts,
Right.
you know, it's just a different world.
Yeah.
So I mean, the way, like I want to have like my father on this podcast and kind of see what his perspective on how
Yeah.
and how things have changed, and everybody
Right.
thinks the next generation has it so easy.
Right. I know.
So what are your thoughts? And then, if you don't mind, and honestly, if you don't want to talk about it, feel free. But there's a stage in your life where you lost your sister,
Oh yeah.
and I can't even imagine what that was like for your parents and their grieving,
Right.
and how you all got through that.
Right.
I mean, I knew Jenny as a sweet girl, and,
Right.
but I didn't know her closely.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and that was always hard for me to deal with
Right.
from a distance. I can't even imagine. So, that process too.
Yeah, that probably has way more impact on my childhood than I actually
Yeah, how old
think
were you?
about it. I was 6.5.
Okay.
Um,
And she was what, 2, 3 years
she
younger?
died when she was 3.5.
Okay.
Yeah. So a couple things. One, I think that generations are always just on the macro scale an overcorrection from the previous generation, right? If you look at the 50s to the 60s, right? So you had the World War II generation, like our grandparents, and George Curtis, like super strict. You know what I mean?
George Curtis Jr.
Yeah.
Because my dad's George Curtis, the third.
The third. Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
You didn't know my dad was
No.
the third?
No. Oh wow.
I was close to being the fourth.
Oh.
There was a long time I was like, thank God that didn't happen. I'm like, there's a point now I'm like,
Yeah.
that would have been kind of cool.
Yeah. I've got a third, and he said he's gonna have a fourth. But so like, there's always this constant overcorrection, right? Like the kind of love and peace generation, kind of running away from the overly strict, environment, and I can't remember the connection, but I think somewhere in there, like we've got the helicopter parents, where what I mean, we are fearful of everything, and that's going to create some sort of overcorrection.
And the snowplow parents,
What's that one?
where they just clear every obstacle.
Right, for them, right, which is so detrimental. I mean, but everything we just talked about is what you're eliminating from your kid's future. So, I actually think, I don't know how you classify the 90s, but I loved it. I thought it was a great generation. We were still out in the backyard playing. I don't remember being home ever. I was out with my friends all the time. It was safe. It was just a really great time to grow up, I think. But there's been overcorrections over the last couple of generations. We're all complaining about millennials and now the new generation, but it's just this perpetual cycle, in my opinion.
Right.
You know what I mean? But as far as being like, I spent a lot of time thinking about this, because the way my characterization is, I had a great family growing up. You know what I mean? Like, loving parents, good siblings, lots of fun, safe environment. It was a really great place, middle America. You know what I mean? We weren't poor, we weren't rich. I had good friends. Like, I look back with fondness of my first 18 years. You know what I mean?
What about discipline wise? Like, how were your parents as disciplinary? Like, did you get spanked?
Yeah, I got spanked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was afraid of dad. You know what I mean? Mom ran the house. You know what I mean? She stayed home.
What do you think of that afraid of dad thing? Because
I liked it. Like
and it's not even.
he wasn't abusive.
Yeah, I don't know if they're afraid. It more like respect. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what the right word is, but you weren't in fear of your dad.
No,
but
no.
You knew
Yeah,
if you
and
crossed the
my
line.
dad's been my best friend for all 40 years. Like, I work with him. I work for his business now. He's my go-to if I'm having a life crisis. Like, we've always had a great relationship. You know what I mean? So, but it was a traditional family environment where, mom stayed home, dad went to work. He if I got into trouble, dad was the one that was going to do the discipline. We goofed off. You know what I mean? So I had a great childhood, but the amount of behavioral issues that I deal with, and we all have them. You know what I mean? The amount of behavioral issues, anxiety. I went through depression in college for different reasons. All of the stuff that I'm grappling with right now. Any clinical psychologist almost always points that back to your childhood. So I'm actually spending a lot of time kind of figuring out, like, what happened in my childhood that has produced this brain that I'm now struggling with.
Right.
That is, like, I always say my brain is just a bully. You know what I mean? Like, it's always telling me, like, you're not good enough, you should quit, like, you're gonna fail, and I'm like, why is that there? You know what I mean? And there's all kinds of explanations for it. But I had a great upbringing. I do think, having spent more time thinking about it, that the death of my sister, which as a parent losing a child, has got to be one of the hardest things to endure. Right. And I think they probably did a great job getting through that. But it had to have had implications. I think my mom has said things like, maybe I paid a little bit less attention to you guys because I was so overly focused on the one that was in the hospital all the time. So there's something that happened in that period of time that has created the person that I am, and I don't blame my parents at all. They did the best. They did a great job. You know what I mean? And there's things that my parents did that I I'm trying to change with my kids, you know what I mean? So you're always reflecting on like this, I didn't like that about my upbringing, so I'm gonna try and do some things differently. But
So like what? Are you avoiding?
no, I mean, I'll just say it blank, and you know this because you spend a lot of time with my parents. They're extremely black and white. You know what I mean? I was raised in a black and white environment,
Yeah.
and I used to be proud of that because I was very convicted. I used to think I was going to get into politics because I was like, "This is the right way: capitalism, freedom. I have all the right answers," and I don't like living like that at all. Like life is way too complex to think that you have all the right answers. You know what I mean? That's why bipartisan political bodies makes no sense because they can't be right 100% of the time and we can't be right 100% of the time. So compromise, willingness to be compassionate towards people with different perspectives. And actually this hit when I went through my divorce because I thought I had it all. I was checking all the right boxes. You know, good family, good career, good relationship. And then when that all just came crashing down, I had way more compassion for other people. So if you go into a grocery store and the person behind you or the cashier is being really rude to you, I normally would have been like, get your stuff together, you know what I mean? Like, don't act like that, you know what I mean? Because you should be, you know.
Right.
But I, having gone through some trauma in my life, I can look at that person and go, sheesh, I wonder what they're going through.
Right.
You know? Maybe they just left the courtroom and their wife of 10 years just left them, you know what I mean? I'd be cranky too.
Right.
So, not living in a black, now that's my default, that's my preset, and I see it come out with my kids. So I still have this kind of like, you know, political gusto, like, oh, the world's going to hell in a handbasket and we need to do that. But I try to correct myself and pull back and be like, you know what? Everybody, and I don't want to be new agey, like everybody's on their own path and all that kind of stuff. Because there are, I believe in absolute truths that people need to be convicted by. But, you know, so being a little bit more, well, compassion. Actually, anybody that knows me tells me I have zero compassion. So that's something I'm working on. But at least just acknowledging that, you know, that's an area of growth, you know what I mean? And certainly being compassionate towards your kids because they're going through all kinds of stuff that you know and don't know about, you know what I mean? But the one thing I want to say without is, so my parents had wild journeys growing up through the 60s and 70s, and when they came together and they...
60s? Oh, they came up.
Growing up,
okay,
yeah.
Yes. I thought you meant you. Yeah.
So they lived a free and wild life for a period of time, but when they had us, Jana, me, and then my sister Jenny, and she passed away, that solidified their faith. So they really turned to their faith and their belief in Jesus Christ as like the solidifying thing to help them through that period, and that's what they passed on to us. And I'm very thankful for that because, this is a whole nother discussion, but I've gone through a crazy arc on my own spiritual faith, most of the time running away from it, you know what I mean? Based on a strong misunderstanding of, you know, like who God is and the craziness of the world, and not being able to rectify between loving God and the chaos and tragedy of the world. But again, on this last 2-year cycle that I'm on, you know, I've been able to make enormous progress on surrendering a lot of that stuff because, you know, I think a lot of times we run away from, well, this is meandering, but we are absolutely spiritual beings. And I won't let, like, this is back to my black and white, I won't let anybody tell me otherwise, because if you spend any time with your consciousness, like this bubble that we have, which is a wild, miraculous, wondrous thing, you can't tell me that there isn't a spirit, like some uniqueness, some spiritual element to everything that we're doing. We are not just animals, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I believe that there's a spiritual life, which is why I think the wellness journey of mind, body, and spirit is really important. And I'm very thankful for the way that my parents raised me and the fundamentals that they taught me. I'm doing things differently now with the application of that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's okay to just believe. I think you need to know why you believe. You know what I mean? Like, if you just believe, you just show up in institutions. Like, I'm a Republican, so you go vote Republican.
Right.
I'm a, and pick any institution that you're associated with. Like, why are you actually there? You know what I mean? Have you actually spent the time reflecting like what your belief system is, and then coming up with ways to put that into practice? You know what I mean? And that's what I'm like. I hope my kids believe the same things that I believe, but I'd rather them spend time critically thinking why they believe it,
right,
than to just do it because I told them to do it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
yeah, if you made that path yourself,
Right.
it's gonna be more to you. Yeah.
But yeah, I loved how I grew up, and I like seeing my kids playing outside, and I don't have a lot of problems with them being tethered to their phones or
Right.
that kind of stuff, because I think that's important. But I also know that every parent gets it wrong, and there's going to be things that I'm doing now that are going to, my kids are going to show up in therapy 20 years from now, which I'm pro therapy. I go to therapy. Like, I think it's important to work your stuff out, but there'll be stuff that I've done that are, when my kids are 30, 40, they're going to be like, yeah, I kind of got that from dad or whatever,
Right.
so.
It'll be interesting when they're raising their own kids.
Yeah, and that's when you start to realize, you're like,
oh, they didn't like this part.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you spank your kids at all? Because
No.
it's interesting how that's gone away.
Yeah.
For understandable reasons.
Yeah.
But
I say no, but I think like when they're 2 or 3 and you give them a little tap just to kind of like, hey, pay attention, you know what I mean? But
right.
I remember like when I was 10, 11, I'd still be put over my dad's knee with a hairbrush. And I remember there was that one time where he spanked me and I just started laughing because I was like, this doesn't hurt anymore.
Right.
And then it was like, all right, we're done with that type of discipline. But that was just traditional at the time.
Yeah. Both my parents being racquetball players had nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think and this is so some of these other ones I've pondered a lot of this. This is one I haven't so much, this topic, but something interesting recently. So a couple years ago, before my grandfather passed on, my mother's father, he went through a stage where he's like apologizing for being the worst father ever.
Yeah.
My grandfather was awesome.
Right.
And I can't imagine him being a bad father.
Right.
And my mother made this whole humorous thing for him of all the things he did wrong, like slow children sign at the end of the street telling us we're all slow children early on. Yeah, things like that.
Right.
My dad recently has been kind of saying that kind of stuff. Like I wasn't like Father's Day this year. Like I wasn't that good of a father. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like all my friends thought you were like
I love your
the
dad.
coolest. Like you're the one they all knew. You're the one that your dad's the best. And I've been.
He's a spitting image of George Curtis. Oh my gosh, when I saw him at the camp, it was like I was looking at George.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah. I don't know where that comes from or why he would think that way. Maybe more involvement. It's interesting because my dad was a minister. If you don't know.
Yeah.
My dad's such an antisocial person. It's such a funny thing that he.
Right.
I can't wait to talk to him about this stuff. Like.
Right.
But I wonder why that comes up. I wonder where his regrets are. But I've been thinking of myself. And
I think family is one of the hardest things that we navigate in this world because you can change jobs, you can change your health, you can change a lot of things. You can't change your family. And so I think, over the course of 60, 70, 80 years, you know what I mean? There's just so many times. And that's an area that I struggle with family and the way we do things versus the way that other people do things. And, it's a constant and you're always kind of pulled back to it. And so I think there's a lot of times where, you do the best with what you have, you know what I mean? But in looking back, you know what I mean? Like there was no way to like pull away and reset, you know what I mean? You're just constantly, thrust into it.
Right.
Which is why there's a lot of really dysfunctional families, you know what I mean?
Right.
And yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack in the Curtis Porter Tounge family environment. You know what I mean? So like one of the ways that I was raised was, no matter what happens, family always comes back together. Always, right? There's always birthday parties and holidays and stuff like that. And some of those holidays and birthday parties, we had some unbelievable liberals and unbelievable conservatives, and some people that believed in were ministers, and other people that were atheists, all in the same roof, and it was explosive. You know what I mean? I don't know if you remember that, but I remember being very explosive. And then it was like, all right, see you at Christmas. You know what I mean? It was just right back at it. You know what I mean? And for better or worse, because everybody has different opinions on that. Like, is there a point where you draw a line and say, okay, I'm moving away from this family environment, or do you just go back every single time as a family? And that because of that, and I think we tend to always continue to come back as a family. That has to create situations where you look back over a 70-year span and be like, yeah, I could have done better. Right. You know what I mean? So, but I'm taking a lot of comfort in, and I learned this early, is I think actually I learned this through my divorce, but I think that what kids need is love. That's really it. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if they had everything or had nothing. If what they really need is love and stability. You know what I mean? So when we went to counseling after the divorce, basically the message was, don't air your stuff in front of your kids. They just need to know that their mom and dad still love them, and that they're going to always love them, and they'll bounce back, right? And they'll be resilient. You know what I mean? And I think we've been successful in doing that. So, you know, if you're being overly critical of their career choices, their education choices, their, you know, their hobbies, and you're not just taking a step back and just showing them like unconditional love, that's when I think you get into a lot of trouble. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm not to say that my parents have loved me unconditionally, because I've put them through hell. You know what I mean? For sure. But you know, I think that's what I'm holding on to. That's, you know, I'll consider that at the finish line a success if my kids, you know, feel like they were safe and peaceful around me.
Loved.
Yeah, and loved. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a stat I heard once that was like, they did a study of all these different learning types of programs to see what was more successful. And at the end, there was no difference between all of it. It was fast. But the one predictor of success was that parents were involved.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't matter which one you chose.
It's such a sad stat, because parents are becoming more and more disengaged. You know what I mean? They think that the right outcome is making it easier for their kids to have success in the future. And that is almost guaranteed to be the opposite. You know what I mean? So.
And you can be the greatest parent in the world and it doesn't, your kid ends up. But I also want to say to my father, like, where he thinks he's a bad parent, like, aren't you proud of me?
Yeah.
Like, because you
did this.
You raised me to who I am.
Right.
The man I am. The man I am is because of you.
Right.
And mom. I mean, you've had more influence on my life than any other two individuals.
Right.
So take pride in that.
Yeah.
You know, hopefully.
Right.
Maybe they are completely disappointed, but I don't think so.
I also believe in determinism. I think I'm actually working through this one right now. I'm thinking about it a lot, and was correlated to when I started meditating. Which, when you actually start thinking about your thoughts, you're like, well, where did that thought come from?
Yeah.
We think we are in control of our thoughts, and you know, you can kind of manifest your next option, right? Do I go left or go right? But there's some code in there that's putting to the top that decision that you actually don't have any control over. And if you play that out over a long period of time, the deterministic model is that, like, there was only ever one outcome. You know what I mean? Like, you're an outcome of all of the environment that you're in, but like, nobody knows why you decide to go to this college over that college. Right. You think you're in control, and you sat down and you did a pros and cons list, but there's an engine in there that's pushing thoughts, and I think that's the deterministic model that, you know. So I actually take some comfort in that, because it's like, I'm going to endeavor to do my best. I'm putting in maximum effort versus minimum or average effort, like I did in my past. Right. Putting in maximum effort on every aspect of my life, and then realizing that at the end of the day, like, there is a deterministic model that we're kind of gonna go down the road that we were designed to go down. I don't know that I believe that entirely, because I want to believe that we're in control, but I'm spending time thinking through that, and it does give me comfort, because it's like, yeah, I got 4 kids. They're gonna go in all kinds of different of which I have no control over.
That could also be a simulation.
Well, the simulation and the deterministic model support each other, right? Where you're like, we could just be hardware and software.
Right.
And there is a code, and that code was going to always choose West Point 100 times out of 100.
Right.
You know what I mean? Even though I'd like to think back and be like, well, if I had just gone to drama class a little bit more, and I'd done this and maybe taken a risk, but there was enough environment already instilled in me through my parents and friends and family that was going to always be the outcome.
Right.
You know what I mean? But and when you look back, it's easy to make that conclusion. But when you're in the moment, like, should I keep training for 100? Right. You know what I mean? That's a decision. I decided that. I could have chose to not decide it, but even still, it's like, right here as we're sitting, like, yesterday I was like, I don't know if I'm going to run again. And right now I'm like, I can't wait to start running again.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And that you and I happened to, like, hit on this, were, like, literally, like, days before I started, weeks before I started into kind of thinking about this stuff, and then you and I had that conversation.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
You know, we both happen to be at this point, and
right.
It's all interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we probably. Well, this is probably a good one to kind of the balance of everything we talked about. Yeah, and I don't know if this so much goes back into our past so much, but more just kind of is a good way to kind of wrap up everything. I don't even know if there's much to talk about. What do you? Because we've been talking. I mean, it's funny how every one of these discussions kind of keep tying back together in discipline and yeah. So I guess there isn't much on that one. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, yeah, you're just gonna have to just hook me off the stage because I'll just keep talking.
Go for it. No, please.
No, this is another one. So for the record, you and I were training for an Ironman for this weekend, and I was doing the swims and the bikes, and 2 months ago, I don't remember, July maybe.
Somewhere around
Yeah. I sent you a note and basically said I gotta pull out of the Ironman. Like
right.
I don't. With everything that was going on at the time, work, relationships, personal goals, I didn't have the energy to commit to learn. Really, I was learning the swim and the bike. I knew I could do the run, and I pulled away. And it was partly there was some relationship stuff that I was going through, and then work was really kind of blowing up.
Right.
And I am like. Being self-employed, I have very specific goals that I'm trying to accomplish with my work, and I'm super excited about it. And I knew that I just really needed to be able to focus on that. So when it comes to life balance, I mean, I think it's great to have goals. I think you have to prioritize them. You know what I mean? And I don't look at it as quitting. Although by strict definition, I quit. You know what I mean? But I do think that in order to do this stuff that we're trying to do, it's a continuous process of prioritization and I don't want to use the word compromise, but just balance to make sure that you're putting all the right energy into the right places. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that is gonna if we keep doing what we're doing, that's gonna be a constant struggle, and there's gonna be times when I think you have to pull back in order to accomplish something else, you know what I mean? But again, it doesn't matter because as long as you're being intentional about the process of every one of those aspects, like if I had just been like, I don't want to do the Ironman, I'm too busy, I got this work thing, and then I just kind of slacked off on the work thing,
right?
You're not giving maximum effort to anything,
right.
You know what I mean? So I'm sleeping good at night because I know that maybe some of my priorities are changing ranks, but I'm still putting in the same effort into those things. You know what I mean?
In your effort level going up, I mean, the training you did for the Ironman, to go from no triathlon to Ironman.
Right. That was a big job.
And what our 100, this was your thing, 100 mile. Well, we ended up 100 mile running week. We did that. Olympic distance swim every day.
Yep.
And we did, what was it?
25 miles.
25 miles biking every day.
Yeah.
That's
for 7 days. That was a good week, and I felt good about that week.
That was the hardest week of any of my training the entire time. So I mean, that you were overcoming so much. I mean, you got to a level it's ridiculous.
Right.
So
I mean, I felt good about it, but I just knew that the Ironman was not as important to me as a lot of these other things that I was doing.
Right.
I really love. I like ultras. I don't know if I can say I love them yet.
Yeah.
They're very hard.
I love hate.
And I knew that was a worthwhile challenge because I knew it wasn't like I was like, oh, I'll just go do a 50 and that's going to be easy. Like yesterday, I was the hardest run I've ever had in my life. You know what I mean? And my body reflects it today. So I still put a challenge out there. You know what I mean? But I was able to do it because I just knew over 2 months that I had some critical work things I had to get through, and I knew I could get the run training in. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So but priorities and maximum effort. You know what I mean? Like just don't do minimum effort. You know what I mean? Like on anything. If you're giving it minimum effort, then don't do it.
Right.
You know, like it's and Yeah, I don't know that I don't know that anybody has a good answer on that one, and I don't know that anybody ever really kind of completely figures it out because, you know, unfortunately with this, you know, bully brain that I have, I'm always like, well, you know, I did sleep 6 hours last night and I could have slept 5. You know what I mean? I could have gotten up at 3 and gotten that in. So there's always more you can do, but I'm happy with what we're doing and what we've done.
But that comes to balance right there. That so one of the things I've put on myself is like a barometers. I don't want to miss out time with my family.
Yeah.
You know, if I have a construction project I'm doing around the yard or whatever, yard work or things that need to be done around the house. If I'm going for a 20-mile run, I still need to get that stuff done.
Yeah.
I need to be in good enough shape
Right.
to be able to do that other work.
Yep.
And so like a balance thing I've been playing with, like sleep, like it's, so we're trying to do these ridiculous distances, trying to do, so I've been cutting back on sleep, and it's like, well, what point where 4 more, like an extra hour of sleep, there's obviously benefits to sleep.
Right.
There's a whole lot. But then I can't get my training in, and then am I grumpier or not? What, like, where's that balance? And everything, like the nutrition and the, like, I can be hard on my nutrition and really focused, but then I can like go and have a margarita with tea.
Right.
You
Right.
like find that balance in everything in life. It's something, like you said, I don't think there's an answer to it, but being aware that you're trying to find balance.
Right.
And what your priorities are, like being with my kids and not missing their sports games or whatever, like that's not an option.
Yeah.
And whether in high school, they're needing less dad time.
Yep.
They want their alone time.
Yep.
You know, it's a
I'm
different
moving into that
dynamic.
window.
So it's a little easier for me to kind of find more me time.
Yep.
But there's wife time.
Yep.
And I enjoy that. I want that. And it's something that I think Dee's been struggling with for a while. Like going into this and thinking I'm going in a different direction from her, but like the love, like just like she saved my ass yesterday during that
Right.
race. Like
Right.
having the nutrition there
Yeah.
and being my partner in this journey, my support,
Yeah.
like is so big to me. And I feel nothing but like I feel more love,
Right. Right.
because of the stuff we're doing.
Yeah. I think you have a greater capacity to get. I mean, it's, if you love yourself, you can love others. You know what I mean? So when you're really giving your maximum effort and everything, you have more capacity to love other people. It doesn't always come through because
Right.
we're all human. You know what I
Right.
mean? But I think you have more capacity. And the other thing that didn't come up, which I wanted, one of my mantras is or the things that I focus on is taking joy in suffering. I mean, it's all throughout the Bible. It's very common in this ultra world that we live in. You really got to be able to find joy and peace in the suffering, and that's makes you superhuman. You know what I mean? Because once you are struggling, but you're still cheerful and joyful, which I still struggle with, but I'm working on it. You know, that's the game changer. And like you were just saying, when you're dealing with life balance and you're trying to prioritize things, my old self would have just been grumpy about everything. Work's stressful, kids are stressful, I didn't get my workout in, and I'm just grumpy, and I'm grumpy for a good reason because life is tough. But then everybody around you is just like, oh, he's just grumpy. You know what I mean? What's the point of that? You know what I mean? If you can give maximum effort, sleep good at night because you know you're putting it all in, prioritize properly, but then be thankful that you have this opportunity to take on this challenge and be joyful about it.
Life is a gift.
And then the time that you do spend with your kids is better.
Right.
Because you're not worrying about missing your workout or you're exhausted because you just did a workout. You're just like, yeah, this is part of the process. This is part of the suffering. This is exactly what I'm chasing. This is what I want to create. So I can be thankful for it, and then you have more capacity to help those other people. So, I mean, I think that's the thing about, like, I see people's life balance get out of control when they are just miserable with everything that they're doing.
Right.
They're not doing anything that makes them happy. If you can do it in a way where you're doing a lot, sure, you know what I mean? But you're joyful even when it's difficult, then your boss thinks, no, wow, Ben's in a really good mood. Or, you know, like, I only had an hour with Dad, but it was a really good hour. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's a huge difference. You got to make that change because, you know, And that's a recent change for me. You know what I mean? So.
All right, one last thing I want
All
to get, definitely want to get to this, and I almost forgot. How are we getting to 100? Like, what's your, like, so, I was watching, first thing, I was debating, I'm like, what's harder, what you did or what I did yesterday? I'm like, okay, mine was 2 hours longer than yours, so it's 2 extra hours of kind of misery, but I wasn't just doing one thing. And I looked at you running yesterday, and I'm like, every time I'd see you, I'm like, it occurred to me, that's me in a half hour.
Yeah.
Like I was just,
right.
I was a few.
I know.
I think what you did was harder, personally. But how do we get to 100? I have some ideas on training wise, but like, what do you think? Because 56 is definitely is hard.
Yeah.
And we're talking pretty much double.
Yeah.
What's the path to 100 in your thoughts at the moment?
Okay, so here's my practical path, right? I wish I could say that I was the type of person that can just go knock it out, right? You don't know until you get there, but I've done enough 50s now to know that these mechanisms that I have to work with are not going to just be ones that can go out and run 100, right? It's, probably most people are like that, but I think there's a few crazies that can just go.
Right.
So it's going to take something. I lost. Okay, yeah, sorry. One, I do not work well with time limits. Early on, like I've realized that. Even when I was like trying to finish my run before you finished, like then I started getting in my head about pace, and I was like, I got to do this. So whenever we do the 100, my preference is going to be it's completely open ended. It's just to finish. Doesn't matter if it's 27 hours or 36. It's just get one under your belt. So practically, so when we did the backyard ultra, when we were trying to do it every hour on the hour, that's where I fell apart, right? So I'm not saying make it easier for you, but just practically, like, let's get 100 under our belt.
And I'm glad you kind of touched on that point. Like, there was a point where I was like really worrying about pace. I'm not even talking like 100 wise, but I wanted to do a pace thing, and then I was kind of miserable in a lot of my runs because I was pushing it to an uncomfortable pace for a long period. And there was a point where actually the zone 2 running kind of got me into this, but like just enjoying the run. At some point, like it's like, and that's been earth. So I'm with you completely.
Yeah. So no timeline.
Even though I still want to do the backyard.
That's like
the challenge of that.
Right. Oh, I completely agree.
Or do the
last man standing. I think he did 147. Yeah. Like 36 hours or something like that. But and then my plan is just to add. I think I want to do a 61, which is 100K, and then an 80, and then 100. And I'm actually.
But those are you just like, how do you get there? How do you? Because 56. I mean, how much do you feel like you had left in the tank?
Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing. It was empty.
So what gets you to that next level besides just pushing through?
Well, okay, so
because I kind of feel like the marathon kicked my ass the first time I did it.
Right.
And it wasn't until for me when I started aiming to 50, then 26 became easy.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like.
Right.
And there's certain things I did in my training. I'm wondering what gets
Okay,
you.
so I think the 30-20 was a huge boost,
exactly.
right? So just mentally,
So if you don't know, backing up a 30-mile run with a 20-mile run like next
day, yeah, which is just so you can run those 20 miles on broken legs and feel good about it. And my 30-20 was great. I felt amazing on my 30-20. I felt terrible yesterday, but that was more had to do with taper and some other things that I can change next time. So more 30-20s or 30-30, you know what I mean? Like that just boosts your confidence. Like when you did your 130-mile bike or whatever it was, it's just like you just build that confidence.
And it's getting to your muscles in a different way. Like
right. Yeah. Your the weak stabilizing muscles are actually getting trained, which is the ones that you need when you're at that distance. Yeah. So I think that is a big part of the training. I think having lower expectations on the outcome of the 100 is just, for me at least, because mine's all mental game. Makes a big difference.
If you walk.
Right. Exactly.
And then, like you said in the race yesterday, the reset.
Yeah.
And that was.
So I learned. So real quick, my first 50, I got to mile 36 and had a complete breakdown on the side of the road in Falmouth on Route 1 in front of the Starbucks, completely crying because I was like, I can't go. I was looking at my watch. I'm like, I got 3 more hours of running. I don't want to run anymore. But I also didn't want to quit because then I knew I was going to have to do it again. So I'm like, I've already come this far. So you get yourself into a window where you're like, going forward is absolute pain and misery. But I've already put in this much time. So that was my first 50. And then yesterday, that window went, and that I went from 36 to 41 walking on my first 50.
Right.
A little bit of shuffle. But I was actually walking to Michelle's house to quit. I was walking 3 miles. I was like, I'm going to get to 40 and I'm just done. In that period of walking, you rest, you get a second wind, and then you're like, okay, now I'm at 40, I can finish the last 10. Yesterday, and I told you, my objective with the race was to push the dark window out further and to get out of it quicker. So I went dark at 42. I was on that left leg off Kennebec Road, and I was like, I'm done. I'm just going to walk home, and I'm going to be a real bore on the podcast. I'm going to have nothing to talk about because I just quit. And I had that for like 2 minutes. And I remembered because I was like, I've been here before, so let me walk my way out of this. And that's when I passed you. And I was like, I'm hitting the reset. I'm going to walk until at some point I know I'm going to feel like running again.
Right.
And then within the mile, so from 42 to 43, I was like, I think I can go. And then you're at 43, you're like you're 9 miles out, and you keep going. So every time we do this, you put, that's the cookie jar, and you put a little note in your toolbox that says, you've been here before, you know how to get out of it. And, if that hits at 60 on the 100, I mean, I don't know. The numbers are crazy to me. I don't know how anybody does it.
I don't either.
But this is why we're training. This is what we're doing. It's not about, can my feet move one in front of each other for 100 miles? Yes, everybody knows that. Anybody can do that.
I don't think everybody knows that.
Yeah, everybody should. But can you pull yourself out of the darkness quickly and multiple times? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, but I know I can, and I don't know how many attempts that's going to take or what, but that's the skill set that we're training right now. Right. And we're applying it to a 100-mile race, but it can apply to anything.
I love that it still feels impossible to me.
Yeah.
That's why I want it
it's
so much.
So annoying.
That's what's so attracted to it that
it's like, no, when I finished yesterday, you have those moments where you're like, you've just run 52 miles and you're like, zero chance I could do this again right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? But that's not true.
Right.
Like, it is possible, and I don't know, it'll be fun when we do it, but.
So one thing I want to change, and I do want to add in, which my runs are so about, okay, I'm doing 13 miles, I'm doing 20 miles, I'm doing, and the mileage matters.
Yeah.
And if I'm being real with myself, hills up and down are the thing that takes me out.
Yeah, that one killed me yesterday.
And I'm like, I gotta start, like, I literally need to just go to a big hill and just do the hill. And not even look at, I don't care about my miles, I'm gonna put in until I get to uncomfortable.
Right.
And then I'm gonna go a half hour more, whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, because I gotta strengthen those muscles that take you down the hill. I gotta strengthen those muscles that take you up. I'm with you that the up, especially as I get more tired, the up is easier to do.
Right.
Then the down becomes a nightmare. But how else am I gonna strengthen it? And I've been avoiding, besides running a really hilly area, but I've been avoiding hill runs, and I think I need to take that. I think taking that to the next level, if I can build that up. I watched a guy doing, he was training for the Barclays Marathon, and when he found out he got in, he was in Europe, Amsterdam maybe, or I can't remember where, Belgium actually, and there was a hill near his house, like a mountain, and he'd run that path over and over and over again, and they ended up naming the path after because he'd run it so much, and I was like, I have to do something like that.
Yeah.
Like to get to the next level, I gotta strengthen that. That's my weakness in running right now.
Right. I mean, I think training. I mean, certainly the training aspect of it, but for me, it's the mental stuff because you're brain always goes before your body,
Right.
and you'd be surprised what your body can still do, but if your brain's not willing to push through, then you know what I mean. So, but
Right.
you have to recreate those moments. You know what I mean. So yesterday was a training exercise to recreate that dark moment when I wanted to quit, or when I was convinced I was going to quit. Like I'd already made up my mind. I've done that twice, and then it's like then you go to work on getting through that experience. And the only way to do this is to put yourself in that situation. And I think that's what so many people just avoid. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, well, if I couldn't do this naturally, then what's the point? You know what I mean? And it's like, well, the point is that there's more to this than just our physical body. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, I look at the 100 as just a great mental toughness exercise, and I also want to get it out of the way in somewhat soon, because
So you put a time limit on the thing.
not a time limit. No, I know, but I want to go back. I really want to. I'm equally interested in a 3-hour marathon. That's because I'm just excited about that one. That just feels like a training program that is a little bit more manageable. It's hard, extremely hard, but so I want to get back into some speed work, but I got to get some of the big ones out of the way first.
Yeah. Back to the balance thing too, is like, what's the optimal balance of how rest, recovery, those 32, and that's where I think the 30-20s are actually such a key, because you can put in this brutal 2 days and get a lot out of it, and then a couple of easier days, instead of like every day just going after it, and figuring that out. And it was interesting, I saw just a thing on triathlons. They did a study on like how many hours people put in and like the results, and actually the people for Ironman, the people that put in like 20 hours per week, or I'll get the numbers, let's say 10 hours a week as opposed to 40 hours a week in that whole graph, the 10 actually performed better.
Yeah, there's diminishing returns,
but it was minimal.
Right.
The best predictor was how many Ironman you'd actually done before.
Yeah. No.
So that speaks to the mental part.
Absolutely,
like, figuring it out and being more confident and learning through the mistakes.
Yep.
So definitely, but there's also the physical part of, like, I don't feel like I'm strong enough right now to do 100. Like I could go to a dark place and probably push that, you know, but there might be repercussions.
Right.
Because I've pushed through something.
Right.
And ended up injuring myself. I'd like to do it and not be laid up for 2 months again.
Right.
But I'm 100% on 100 focus right now.
Yep.
Ironman's done.
Yep.
I want to get there.
Yeah.
I think hills, 30-20s, the fasting that we've been doing, but that's another interesting part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Nutrition.
Yeah.
So my Ironman Garmin, who knows how accurate it is, but told me 7,000 calories were burned during my Ironman yesterday is what they estimate. And I took in, I did the math this morning, maybe 2,000.
Can you pause this real quick? I've got to use the bathroom. I know we're almost done, but I want to come back.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so fueling an ultra, fueling 100 is a different thing.
Yeah.
And if so, you've got to eat more than you have to eat.
You still on?
Yeah, we're still.
Oh.
I'll just snip out that
Yeah.
part. And to be the most efficient digesting, you need to not be running
Yeah.
for a stretch.
Right.
To let your body kind of take in what you just ate. And how to balance all that.
I'm fortunately good with like I don't have digestive problems yet, so that's great.
I'm with you for the most part.
But what I definitely notice is that and I've heard them talk about this, but food variability, because 9 hours in, like whatever I was eating yesterday, like I didn't want to even look at it anymore. You know what I mean? So how do you get 24 hours of nutrition in there where you actually can, just stomach the food? You know what I mean? Like I didn't want another energy bar, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or whatever the case was. So,
and this is the first time this has ever happened that I remember. Have you ever been like at movie theaters and you had Sour Patch Kids and you have too many of them and your mouth would just beat out?
yeah.
I took a drink last night of a Gatorade. It was just there. I was just thirsty.
Yeah.
I need something, and it like felt like needles going
Yeah.
through my. Like,
Yeah.
I think all that salt and stuff had just.
Right.
And then just eating anything was like
Yeah.
beating up my mouth.
Right.
It was painful. Like
Right.
I was worried this morning. I'm like, well, I don't have a voice
Yeah.
to try to do this podcast.
Yeah, I don't, nutrition, race day nutrition is very elusive. I don't think I know that. And I bet that changes so frequently just based on how you feel that day.
Right.
So,
Right.
but that's why I think fasting is such a great tool, because worst case, absolute worst case, you know you can go
You
without
can
it.
hold off, and,
Right.
and fat's gonna
Mhm.
push you through it for sure. And hopefully the reset happens, where then you get past it and you can then digest later.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the things that ultra marathoners, you know, they're eating mashed potatoes and they're eating pancakes, and it's kind of at some point what your body's going to handle. What,
Right.
You know, if
Yeah.
the quesadilla is what you can get in, the quesadilla is what you can get in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. We did 3 hours.
I know. Felt like 2 minutes.
It definitely went by fast.
We
And I
still
didn't
have
even-
so much to talk about.
We really do. Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure, this whole journey with you, and doing this. This excites me, doing this with other people,
Yeah.
doing family member, just because we all have these different, we all come from these different places. We have different ideas,
Right.
how we get to our ideas, different ways of thinking, and I definitely do too much. I don't like to talk about myself. I don't want to be in a group of people and be boasting. Like, it drives me nuts when somebody's you're there and like, oh, I run this, I do this, I do that.
Right,
It's like,
I know.
like,
Right.
you need me to say good job or something.
Right.
Like, but I also don't ask the questions of people either. Like I'm fine just not sharing my story and not getting their story. I want to
Yeah.
break out of that. Like,
Right.
once again, it's this whole seeing your weakness, seeing where you're lacking, and challenging yourself
Right.
to do something different.
Right.
And these little quick, on a bike ride recently, one of Keelan's teachers, Mrs. O'Brien, former teachers from middle school, and she's on the board of trustees with me, so I kind of know her. And I biked by her, and we said good morning to each other, and I mentioned something about that I'm training for, an Ironman, and then we went our separate ways.
Yeah.
Like there was no, and she's one of the ones that I want to get in and have a conversation with her, actually, on a podcast. I know so little about her or
Right.
all these people in my life,
Right.
and there's just these quick little interactions, and I think life would be kind of cool
Yeah.
to get to know more,
Right.
and have literally questions you and I were just talking about,
Right.
and getting completely different perspective.
Right.
You and I are we're kind of lockstep with a lot of things
Right.
that where we think,
Exactly.
and getting branching out from that politically, emotionally, family, upbringing. Like there's
Yeah.
people are interesting. There's so much interesting out there.
Yeah.
We're so quick to just be like the guy yelling at me on the side of the street,
Right.
because I was biking on the side of the road.
Well, I'm more interested in the process than the performance, and so some of the best conversations and some of my best friends are the ones that I can sit down with and like talk about, like what if they're having troubles at work or whatever. It's just like I don't care what you do for work or where you've been or any of that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, well, what are you learning? You know what I mean? Here's what I've learned, and like
Right.
giving different perspectives. Like those are the best conversations, and that culturally, that's something we do not do. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
all about checking a box, or I did this, I did that, and it's like, oh, okay, great, but I want to know what you learned. You know what I mean? What did you avoid that I could avoid? You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. And I wish that was the substance of our communication.
Right. And you talked about how your family tends to be black and white in that upbringing. And life is so nuanced.
Mm.
And I think it was maybe like an English class or somewhere, like where persuasive argument kind of writing class, where they're like, I remember a teacher saying that you need to, you had to put in a counter argument. But the best way to make an argument is to basically look at the other side and understand the other side.
Right.
And if you understand, I'm really interested to see how, like, I have ideas of things that, like, why would we want this? Because it's clearly, well, some people have ideas, defunding the police. Let's just throw that. I
Right.
don't really understand the other side
Right.
of that, but there's I'm sure there's well thought out
Yeah.
people that you just
Yeah.
grabbed that on
Right.
there. Yeah. I'm looking forward to getting to know different perspectives.
Yeah, yeah, it's good. It makes your perspective more, broad and
And then
and
you're
colorful.
more understanding of other people.
Right.
Like it back to I mean I'm a broken record with this, but it snowballs.
yeah, it does.
Into positivity and better life, better understanding, better, like I'm going to talk to this teacher who I believe she's retired or close to retirement. The wealth of knowledge she has, who Melissa just started as a teacher.
Yeah,
Like that knowledge can be shared, and
Yeah.
then like, and maybe somebody else watches this podcast and gets some ideas from her, and
yeah,
just
yeah,
trying to make this. We're all going apart so much, and I
I
like
know.
to bring people together.
yeah. It's good.
And maybe nobody watches this besides you, me, and your mom.
Well, we'll do more. We've got more events coming up, so
Awesome. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Yep. We might have lost the last few minutes, but hold on. We'll get back into it another time. Looks like 3 hours might be the max.
Oh wow.
2 hours, 59 minutes, 59 seconds. Actually, the GoPro would have picked up.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
actually, the GoPro would pick up the end of the sound.
Do a little outro. Oh, that was great. Nice chairs, man.
Thank you.
Those are comfortable.